Oh, okay. They can hear now. So for the folks who are online, we're just doing roll call. Dr. Clay.
Here.
Thanks, Dr. Clay. Dr. Hagerman.
Present.
Member Kravickas.
Here.
Member Meyerson. Dr. Cruz Rivera.
Present.
Dr. Corey, you have a quorum.
Fantastic. Thank you. And next, we'll move on to President's Report. And the good news is I don't have a President's Report, so we'll move directly to the Superintendent's Report. Superintendent?
The bad news is I do. I have two things to report on, and the first one is very, very good. The second one is not good, but I guess life can be like that. The first one, we're celebrating 6 schools that won National Blue Ribbon Awards from the federal government. And that's a big, big, big deal. I'm going to every one of the schools for their celebration, except one that Margaret, our chief deputy, is going to. But I just want to tell you something about each school because it's such an important thing. The first one is Arizona Shadow Ridge High School, a school that I already went to their celebration, and it was on the football field, and they had a couple of thousand people there. In addition to the general curriculum, Shadow Ridge High School offers advanced placement and dual enrollment programs in which many students earn college credit while attending high school. Shadow Ridge High School is home to the district's award-winning engineering career and technical education program, with classes including honors and an engineering internship. The visual and performing arts play a central role at Shadow, with students participating in the Arizona State Seal of Arts Proficiency Program. Shadow Ridge High School has been recognized as an A school by the Arizona Department of Education, is listed in U.S. News and World Report's top high schools in Arizona, and is an A+ school of excellence. The second school is the Arizona Agribusiness and Equine Center in Prescott Valley. The school has proudly served the students and their families and that's a charter school. The school has proudly served the students and their families of the Quad City area for the past 12 years. The school has a population of 330 students. Families want their children to participate in an early college program where they can earn their associate degree through Yavapai College before they graduate from high school. The administration works with each student to plan his or her college classes, meets with each student multiple times a year, and guide students toward their college success. Teachers and staff work with students, prepare them for college by teaching them to become self-advocates. The third one is Arizona Xavier College Preparatory, which I will be going to shortly. And as a Jewish boy, I'll be sitting through their mass. Since 1943, Xavier has provided an environment where women reach the highest standards in academic excellence and extracurricular activities. Xavier's acclaimed programs in academics, arts, technology, and athletics continually evolve to meet changing educational and college requirements, as well as needs of students. Project-based learning modules and partnerships with local universities increase student engagement. International study opportunities provide a global perspective of culture and service. More than 30% of students graduate with associate degrees through the dual enrollment program, providing a significant advantage as they enter college. The fourth one is Arizona Mark T. Atkinson Middle School. Atkinson received an A rating from the state just 1 year after its transformation in 2022 from a traditional middle school to a gifted academy serving students throughout the Cartwright School District. The school's philosophy is embedded in its code: community, opportunity, diversity, and excellence. These pillars drive our students to discover their unique strengths, establish meaningful connections, and pursue academic excellence. Atkinson School students are encouraged to think critically and develop innovative solutions to real-world problems, preparing them to navigate and contribute to an interconnected world with confidence and empathy. The fifth school is Arizona Robert Bracker Elementary School in Nogales. By the way, I've visited Nogales schools, and I'm always impressed with how enthusiastic the kids are in those schools. It's a joy to go to the Nogales schools. Bracker Elementary uses instructional strategies to improve reading comprehension in English language arts and math. Teachers help students build vocabulary, implement depth of knowledge activities, and sequence and synthesize key concepts. Bracker Elementary strives for English proficiency, reading proficiency, and offers a multitude of after-school programs and clubs, including robotics, yoga, art, fitness, music, band, and art classes to provide a comprehensive and 21st century learning experience for all students. The school is known for its academic excellence, consistently earning a letter grade of A from the Arizona Department of Education. This achievement highlights the school's dedication to high academic standards and its effective use of Marzano's high-yield instructional strategies. The final school is Arizona Chandler Basis. As many of you know, the Basis schools have more than 1 year been chosen as having the best high school in the entire country. Since opening in 2011, Basis has sustained their commitment to delivering a world-class education that fosters not just intellectual curiosity, but also character development, leadership skills, and profound personal growth. The rigorous college preparatory education at Basis readies students for the competitive university admissions process, helps them become eligible for scholarships, prepares them to prosper at top colleges, and enriches their lives. Teachers are deeply committed to their academic subjects and exhibit that commitment in guiding and mentoring students. Programs like the Senior Research Project and diverse extracurricular offerings ensure every student can foster and foment their interests and talents. Whenever I'm asked about whether Arizona schools are good enough to attract businesses here, I always tell them we have many schools that are as good as any other schools in the entire country, and this is an illustration of that. So I'm very proud to announce those 6 schools. Now the thing that's not so good, which you won't want to applaud for. At the last meeting, a number of people complained about the delay in receiving approval for reimbursements in our ESA program. My view is that their frustration is justified. Our approval of direct pay is within 15 days. Our approval of marketplace within 27 days. Those are reasonable, but reimbursements have become an overwhelming problem. Last year, reimbursements were approved within 30 days. A number of factors which I will cover have caused overwhelming challenges with improving reimbursements, so that now approvals take 90 days, and the situation is getting worse. We are getting purchase requests of all types at the rate of 2 million a year. That would require each employee to review and approve 500 a day, which is an impossible workload. Time only makes it feasible to approve 200 while working hard. So if we do not do anything major, the situation will continue to get worse. We will need to take some major actions to speed that up, but each alternative has drawbacks of its own. We are going to ask the Handbook Task Force to consider the alternatives and give us advice while we research the issues ourselves. These are the factors that have caused the situation. 1, more people have requested participation in ESAs, while the number of full-time equivalent employees authorized by the legislature has not increased. For the legislative session beginning in January, we will ask for an increase, but we have no way of knowing whether it will be granted. 2, last year, the legislature, without consulting us, approved paying tuition through reimbursement, where previously that had to be paid through Class Wallet. This has significantly increased the workload and therefore the approval time. 3, the Attorney General again significantly increased the workload by requiring our employees to check every reimbursement for supplemental materials against curriculum. We are joining the Goldwater Institute in seeking a judicial determination against that order from the Attorney General. Until we get a court order, we cannot disobey the Attorney General's order because the Attorney General could claw money that we had sent to parents, clawed back, which was an unacceptable situation. The order from the Attorney General has created problems implementing the ESA program, which we will document in the lawsuit. We tried auto-approving everything at $85 and under, but some people started buying multiple Amazon gift cards for $85. They figured out that these were being approved without anyone looking at them. figuring that they would get through without anyone seeing it. So we had to stop that. After studying the issue, we also found that most requests that could not be approved were for small amounts rather than large amounts. We could not send the money right out and audit later because we would risk sending out money for outlandish expenses such as a $5,000 for a gold Rolex watch, $25,000 for a golf simulator, and other examples that would have totally undermined the credibility of ESAs with the public. Those two examples are real examples. Those were requests that we got. Now we are in the process of doing risk analysis to determine what cases have low risk where we could send the money and audit later. As I mentioned, we will ask the handbook committee to study this issue and make recommendations while we also do our own studies. We will have to make major changes because we agree with parents that a 90-day delay in paying reimbursements is too long. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'll move us on to the Executive Director's report. Executive Director Ross, please go ahead.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. This is mine, I think everybody's favorite part of the board meeting.
Absolutely.
Where we get to honor a couple of amazing kids from across Arizona and who are products of amazing educational environments and amazing teachers and families. And so we have two such kiddos with us today. I say kiddos because I'm old, so no offense to our to our students who are here. With us first is Emily Garcia from San Luis High School in Yuma, Arizona. Emily was nominated by our Associate Superintendent Jankowski. She participated in the 2024 Next Gen Latino Leadership Program, spent a week in DC learning about the legislative process and developing leadership skills, learning about how the federal government works. She participated in Youth Mental Health Conference and shared her experience bringing positive change to her community and has led activities and raffles at that same conference. So let's welcome Emily.
So, honorable members of the board, parents, teachers, and respectable audience. Good morning. My name is Emily Garcia, and I am a current senior at San Luis High School. I stand here today proud and above all honored to receive such virtuous recognition. With me today back there is Ms. Lozano and Ms. Madrigal, who are one of the many reasons of why I became the person that I am today. The support, kindness, and understanding of all my teachers and mentors throughout my high school career having changed me beyond imagination. Their guidance not only has made me grow as a student, but also as a person. Yet, if I had to name the people who have completely shook my world, my teachers, Mr. McDougall and both Mrs. Toledo's, won't go unmentioned. Their constant advice and unwavering faith in me have pushed me more than once in achieving my goals, and eventually I started to believe in the potential they saw in me as well. From Washington, D.C., Baltimore's National Health Conference, and Notre Dame University, I continue to experience life beyond Arizona, taking and spreading a little bit of myself all over the country and taking the things I learned back into my community. Every opportunity had impacted me more than the previous one, and it made me realize all the opportunities that there is to experience if you have the courage to take them. My hope and dream is to continue my education. The where is still undecided for now, but hopefully I can get that full ride that I was talking about. And I want to become eventually an
Did you
attorney.
hear that, Dr. Cruz Rivera? She's still a free agent.
My hope and ambition is to become an attorney. A family want to be specific. Yet my biggest wish is to continue to make those who confide in me proud. Especially my older sister Nayeli. She is in active duty right now. She'll be at home hopefully in November. And to prove myself that coming into the United States was the correct decision. But for now, as I promised my previous counselor, Ms. Castañeda, I will continue to both take care of myself and those around me. Thank you so much for listening to me today. Have a beautiful day and take care.
Just want to say something real quick.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that I visited the San Luis schools, and they're also unusually excellent schools.
Some magic happening in Yuma, right, Dr. Course? So up next, we have another student of the month with us, Eva Luz Pombo, who's an 11th grade student at Arizona School for the Arts. She was nominated by her choral department chair, Jessica Elder. She volunteers countless hours at Hospice of the Valley, where her kindness and genuine nature shine through. Serves as the director of Heartbeats with the Welcome to America project. She helps provide musical instruments, bicycles, and other items for refugees. She's an Arizona School for the Arts ambassador and leads RISE, a club dedicated to finding ways for students to give back to their community, and is an honorary student member of the Arizona School for the Arts School Board. So, Eva?
Good morning, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Eva Luz Pombo, and I'm a junior at Arizona School for the Arts. I'm joined this morning by my parents, my abuelos, my nani, Miss Vergulia, my Nina, and Miss Elder, my amazing teacher who nominated me and has believed in me and supported me in my high school career. I began my education in the Phoenix L School District at Faith North Montessori and Augustus Shaw Montessori before starting 5th grade at Arizona School for the Arts, which blends a rigorous college preparatory curriculum with the performing arts. I've been at ASA for almost 7 years now, and I would not have it any other way. I think what is so amazing about ASA is that it cultivates the whole person. ASA has taught me not only how to be a good student and musician, but also how to be a good human being. And that's in large part because of the students and the faculty that make up ASA. The culture at my school is a unique blend of technical excellence, whether that be in the arts or in academics, cultivated artistry, and above all, compassion. Everyone who goes to ASA is a part of an uplifting community of truly excellent students and teachers who are simultaneously one of the kindest, most authentic people you'll ever meet. In this community, whether it's because of teachers like Miss Elder or my classmates who continue to inspire me every day, you're encouraged to be yourself, be kind, and do what you love. And what more can we ask for, really? I came to ASA with dreams of being a Broadway actress and a Pulitzer Prize winner. But I didn't really see myself as being good at music or singing. Choir at that time was a requirement, and frankly, I joined somewhat apathetically. And then I was put into Miss Elder's class in 7th grade, and she just totally blew my mind with her passion and with the way that she thought about music. I began taking singing lessons with her, and this was when I discovered how empowering and cathartic it feels to sing. There's no feeling quite like standing side by side with people and using your collective voices to create a living, breathing entity that you're all present within for that moment in time. Choir and music in general has a way of bringing people together and connecting us on the basis of our humanity. And it's that meaning that I derive from music that fuels my passion to pursue it every day. Last May, I was awarded the title of Best in Class for high school sopranos in the state of Arizona for an Italian art song I performed called Pur ti cesti, which I could not have done without Miss Elder's belief in me and the inspiration I get from my fellow choristers at school. I also am the co-president of an organization called Heartbeats, which gives instruments to newly arrived refugees in Arizona and was founded on a faith in the connective power of music that transcends differences in language and culture. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to be a Pulitzer Prize winner when I was in 5th grade. I never really considered science or math because it didn't seem like it was made for me. As someone who is Mexican Spanish American, I didn't grow up seeing or hearing about many Latina scientists or mathematicians. In 8th grade, I applied for a 3-week summer program at Georgetown University, and on a whim, I chose to apply to the neurology program, which I was accepted to. On the first day, I remember sitting in this tiny windowless classroom in the medical school basement for 8 hours straight, and over the course of those 8 hours, coming to the realization that this is, without a doubt, what I want to study for the rest of my life. The experience of studying the brain is this dollhouse moment of looking inside and discovering the neuronal basis for why we think, feel, and act the way that we do. And I just couldn't get enough of it. I remembered going to class all day and then going to my dorm and just chasing research paper after research paper and question after question until 1 o'clock in the morning, and then going to sleep and waking up the next morning to do it all over again. A year after my experience at Georgetown, I began volunteering in Hospice of the Valley's Teens in Nursing program, where I bathe, position, and take the vitals of patients receiving end-of-life care, among other things. It is such a privilege to care for patients and families at such a difficult and cherished time in their lives. I've learned so much about the nature of human relationships, life, and death. One thing I've learned that I will carry with me throughout my life is the value of the individual and our responsibility as healthcare workers to safeguard individual identity, or who we are, and concern ourselves with individual dignity, or how that identity is honored during and after life. And to me, neuroscientists and neurologists have such an important role within that collective responsibility, because our identity, our sense of self, lives within the brain. Working in hospice, I've witnessed the heartbreak that is felt so deeply by a person and their family as they lose pieces of their identity to a neurodegenerative disease. This, in addition to my curiosity for the brain, is the reason why I sought out an opportunity to work for a neurodegenerative disease lab this past summer. I was accepted into the KEYS program at the University of Arizona, which is a 7-week research internship program where interns are given the opportunity to work 40 hours a week in a U of A lab on ongoing projects. I was and am extremely fortunate to work in the Madhavan lab, which is a neurodegenerative disease lab focused on Parkinson's disease. The project I became a part of was focused on testing the efficacy of a certain pharmaceutical in slowing and stopping the progression of Parkinson's, which is something no drug is currently capable of. For 6 weeks, I analyzed the expression levels of 3 molecules of interest to determine the impact of the drug on the brain. And 3 months later, I'm honored to still be working with them on the same project, but this time doing image analysis of microglia, which are the immune system cells of the brain. I'm infinitely grateful to every single person in the Madhavan lab for inviting me into their wonderful world of research, believing in me, challenging me, and putting up with my scores of questions. You've probably already guessed it by now, but I plan on being a doctor. My dream is to get my MD, PhD, and be a neurosurgeon and a neuroscientist. While there are no scientists or medical doctors in my family, they are probably, in even more ways than I can see now, the ultimate impetus for my passion and success. Since I was little, they've taught me that the reason we are on this earth is to serve others. My work ethic is intrinsic to the unfathomable grit and hard work they've exerted throughout their entire lives, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for their example, love, support, and sacrifices. Gracias, abuelo, abuela, nani, tata, mama, y papá. Te lo debo todo. Thank you so much for having me today.
Dr. Kors, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes the executive director's report.
Fantastic. So frustrating you get to steal the show every month, but rightfully so. So I'll move us on to item 2, call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment on items not on today's agenda or on the consent portion of the agenda. And as always, we will limit speakers to 2 minutes. Executive Director Ross, do we have some folks who want to chat with us?
Dr. Kors, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up first is Isabel Welch, followed by Brandy Blackford, and then Simone Bell, excuse me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I have copies and that's
Yeah.
wonderful. Here we go. My name is Isabel Welch, and I am the Director of Government Affairs with American Board for Certification of Teacher Excellence. So I am here to discuss what is on the agenda today regarding our program. So in 2017, the Arizona legislature passed SB 1042, which established guidelines for the operation and renewal of alternative teacher preparation programs. American Board was granted approval to operate for 5 years because it met the requirements, which would be a nonprofit that operates in at least 5 states that has been in operation for at least 10 years. Since we started operating in Arizona, we've certified nearly 250 teachers. We currently operate in 15 states. Since our founding in 2001, we have certified more than 19,000 teachers. In order to ensure that successful programs like American Board could continue operating well into the future, the legislature specifically limited the scope of the review and renewal process. Section 7C states that programs should be reevaluated and renewed based on their ability to prepare and place teachers. American Board's ability to prepare and place teachers is unquestioned, and we should have been renewed quite easily. However, we haven't been able to operate in Arizona since August 9th, 2022. While we were participating in the review process, the department asked us to submit a new alternative preparation program application despite our track record. And in an effort to move forward, we complied with their request and completed the application to the best of our ability. But they did continue to ask for more and more information that we felt exceeded the scope of SB 1042. At one point in this process, we even passed administrative review, and then we went back, a lot of back and forth. Upon review of Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 15-501.01C1, it states that the rules established by the State Board of Education should allow for various programs of sequence and design, not require a prescribed answer, not unnecessarily restrict alternative preparation programs, and evaluate programs based on their ability to prepare and place teachers.
Thank you.
Up next, Dr. Kors, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have Brandy Blackford and then Simone Bell.
Hello. Sorry about that. Trying to get everything going here.
Just fine. We can hear you. Just start when you're ready.
Perfect. Dr. Corey, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak. As an ESA parent, I am extremely thankful for the program as a whole. It truly does allow me to fully tailor my children's education to their strengths, needs, and interests. However, as Superintendent Horn spoke earlier, we are at the end of the first quarter, and as of Friday, ESA is almost 13 and a half weeks behind in approving reimbursements, basically the entire quarter. And as funding is set to drop sometime in the next 10 days for quarter 2, they are just going to get further behind. This is 3 billing cycles of interest over 3 months of thousands and thousands of dollars that families like mine are out of pocket. And now families are having to decide whether to pay the bills and mortgage or continue with their child's education. This isn't accessible, it isn't accommodating, and feels like it is purposeful, especially with the election in just over 2 weeks. We as parents have an obligation to submit all of our paperwork by October 31st for quarter 1. If an order is looked at and needs additional documentation, we have 5 days or the order is rejected. I respectfully ask that ESA also have time limits imposed on them to process things in a more timely fashion. I respectfully request that the legislature is lobbied to budget for additional employees. I request that you permit overtime to get the backlog cleared. I deeply appreciate the statement that Superintendent Horn expressed earlier regarding the current state of reimbursements and the directions he plans to take. Please help us help our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have Simone Bell.
Ms. Bell, are you there?
Can you hear me?
We can indeed. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Esteemed members of the board, I am Simone Bell, parent of a special education student participating in the Education Savings Account program. My child has been homeschooled since kindergarten due to specific educational requirements. Until the 2023 academic school year, my son was enrolled in a public K-12 online school, which met his needs adequately. Following unforeseen circumstances that adversely impacted my child's education, I was introduced to the ESA program, which initially appeared to be an ideal solution. We are currently in our second year of the ESA program. However, what began as a promising opportunity has developed into a challenging experience fraught with administrative complexities. While the first year of ESA was efficient and user-friendly, this year we faced burdensome curriculum requirements and protracted approval processes. Even when orders are finally approved, they often are canceled by vendors due to price fluctuations or inventory issues. This necessitates reinitiating the entire process, resulting in average wait time exceeding 1 month or more for basic educational supplies. These delays have significant financial implications. Currently, ESA owes my family over $4,000 in reimbursement. At the rate we are going, I will not see any of these reimbursements for months to come. This puts my family in a desperate financial hardship, especially with the holidays approaching. I am now making a choice between providing holiday meals for my family or paying for tutoring for my special needs child. Even when I can secure the necessary educational resources for my child, the lack of timely reimbursement has exhausted my personal funds, and I can no longer afford to provide my autistic child with the crucial educational support he requires. This situation is detrimental to my child's academic progress. Therefore, I respectfully request that the board include a dedicated agenda item at the next meeting to comprehensively address the ongoing issue with the ESA program. Thank you for your attention in this matter.
Thank you.
Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. That concludes this call to the public.
Thank you. Then I will move us on to item 3. This is the consent agenda. We've got a relatively lengthy list, items 3A through 3M. I'll give my colleagues a second to take a look at that list to see if you would like any item pulled for discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
I
Please.
requested items B, C, and J.
B, C, and J. Okay, absolutely. Would anyone else like a item pulled? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent item, the consent agenda items 3A, 3D through I, 3K through M. I think I did that right. Do I have such a motion? Member Kravickas, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Member Meyerson, thank you. Any discussion? Any conversation? Questions? Hearing none, all in favor of presenting the consent agenda items as described, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. All right, passes unanimously. We will then circle back to item 3B, denial for American Board certification for teacher excellence, elementary education alternative pathway educator preparation program leading to an Arizona certification in elementary education grades K-8. Member Krivickas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I guess I'd have questions for the department. My first question is this is actually an application for renewal, correct? Or maybe staff? So it's technically a
we-
renewal application?
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, with us today is Jamie Wilbur, the Deputy Associate Superintendent,
Yeah,
oversees
we'll
the
wait
work.
till she gets to the microphone
for
and be
ADE.
sure to hit the button. There we go.
Hi.
Welcome, please.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, President Core, members of the board. Member Krivickas, your question was, this is an application for renewal, correct? Correct. So yes, this was an application for renewal and the program expired on 8/9 of 2022 and no renewal application was submitted during the renewal application window. It actually came to the department on January 5th, 2023. And we did provide opportunity for this program to go through the renewal process, even though it was past that time. We did follow through with state statute ARS 15501. And if you refer to that C1, through that, the board has implemented board rule providing R72604 through the alternative program preparation pieces. And so we provided opportunity to meet with ABCTE several different times and provided 3 different extensions and provided opportunity for them to update deficiencies that we saw according to what is in board rule that is required for their application. And those deficiencies were not met. And so at this time, over the last year and a half, we have recommended for denial at this time. It does not mean that they cannot reapply after this if they feel like they would like to move forward with that.
So do we feel that the application is substantially different from that of other providers, which I think is what the statute calls for? I have not looked at it. I'm asking.
Yes, yes, President Core and Member Krivickas, yes. So what we currently have for the alternative prep program route for looking at what is different from the traditional route, yes, and that has been provided in what is set in board rule that has been outlined and approved by state board.
Okay, so I think not having read obviously what they just gave us, some of the items like specific curriculum budget, are all of those things in state board rule?
Yes, Member Krivickas, they are.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Krivickas, do you have any substantially different questions for 3C? Okay. Okay, very good. Just, do you recommend a separate?
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, I would, my guidance would be to vote on item 3B, 3C, and then go to Member Krivickas for item 3J.
Okay. Thank you, Executive Director Ross. Then I would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 3B and 3C. Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Superintendent Horn, do I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to give that to Dr. Clay just by a whisker. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 May I explain my vote?
Absolutely, always.
Yes, I'll vote aye. Obviously with the caveat that they can reapply. I don't know if there's an opportunity for us as state board. If the issue is a state board rule and its consistency with statute, that may warrant a separate conversation, because I always want to make sure that we're consistent with legislative intent. Again, I haven't looked at this, but I just think it's a question worth asking. Thank you.
Absolutely. And with that, you are voting yes. Okay, just to clarify. Thank you. Do you have the vote as described?
President Core, Superintendent Horn, the motion passes.
Thank you. Then I'll turn our attention to 3J. approval of the Move On When Reading LEA literacy plans for the release of K-3 reading-based support funds. Member Kervikas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow members. I wanted to pull this for two reasons. One is I wanted the opportunity to ask staff if the new changes we made to the rules last year went into effect with these are the new round of applications where the new rules went in. And two, honestly, I wanted to spotlight the fact we haven't had, that I'm aware of, a public briefing yet on the new test scores that came out. And third grade reading scores went down. They're 39%. And if that's not a crisis, I don't know what is. I don't know what I want to ask, but I feel like the board's got to, I don't know, have more discussions. I know we have a subcommittee that's working on it. Hopefully they're going to, but this is 39%. This is a crisis. And that's, I think it was 16% for students with disabilities.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Member Kervikas. You are correct. The K-3 Early Literacy Subcommittee was presented with that data in the October meeting. I believe it was last week. The K-3 Early Literacy Subcommittee is holding its final meeting November 13th, and then the work of that committee will come before the board in December. So the intent has always been to have all of that work come before the board, but to go through that subcommittee first. And just as a reminder, Member Meyerson is the vice chair of that subcommittee, and Vice President Haley also sits on that subcommittee representing the board.
Will the board be getting a presentation on test scores, this year's test scores?
We can absolutely arrange for that.
And I think that's just been asked for. Yeah.
I'll be happy to do that.
And any other questions, Member Kervikas?
Yeah, my first question is, with this round of applications, are these reflective of the updated rules that?
Member Kervikas, my apologies. They are reflective of the updated rules. One thing to keep in mind is a number of the more substantial changes that were made in rule are for the 25-26 school year. There was purposely a 2-year window given to the department to implement, because the changes called for in rural require updating their Move On When Reading portal, which they're in the process of doing right now. Per Tiana Sanchez, who's the director of ELA, who sits on the K-3 subcommittee, they are piloting the new portal this year with, I think, like 15 districts, and then they'll do a full launch next year with PD for the field. And so it was always dated out. The rules were always pushed out for 2 years to give the department time to have the technology and training in place.
Thank you for that update. And I just want everyone to know, I want schools to get this money. My intent is not to pull it for that, but my intent is to flag this, for us to have conversations. And as a board, I don't want this to be just a perfunctory consent agenda item. When Move On When Reading should be, in my opinion, the most important thing we're discussing.
Member Meyerson, thoughts or question?
Yeah, no, thank you. Just I wanted to echo the concern that Member Kervikas has raised. And I think specifically speaking, like on behalf of the K-3 subcommittee, this has been literally the entire focus of that committee and the work of the committee. And I think what we hope to bring back to the next meeting in December is actually there will be a whole host of recommendations, but my focus on the committee has been, as much as possible, trying to distill it to what is the highest leverage move that we could make, both from the committee and then bringing back to the board to dramatically influence those numbers. And so just know that I very much echo the concern. And I think that's under Director Ross's point, a huge focus of what we want to bring back coming back to December, of what can we do that would be highest leverage to support those students.
Any other thoughts or questions or conversation? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item 3J. Do I have such a motion? Member Kervikas, thank you. Do I have a second? Member Meyerson, great. Any additional conversation? All right, then all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Moving us on to item 4. Our second call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment on items on today's general session. Executive Director Ross, do we have anyone who would like to speak to us?
Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, we do not have anyone registered for this call to the public.
All right, very good. Then I'll move us on to the aforementioned general session, number 5. This is a information only item. It's a presentation and discussion regarding feedback from the Student Advisory Panel on the board's draft 2025 strategic plan. So Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Corr, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, we are very excited to have 3 members of the Student Advisory Panel with us today and to provide some student voice into the draft strategic plan for the board. Introducing those members will be the person who oversees that work for the board, and she does an amazing job, Shannon Etz.
I mean, I wouldn't really call it work because I get to hang out with really cool 11th and 12th grade students on a regular basis. So that's pretty fun for me. We have 3 of our members here. We've got Caleb, and I will butcher his last name, Gabrielus, and he'll correct me. He's our chair of our student advisory panel. We have Sophia Lynn, who's our vice chair, and then Divya Natarajan, who's one of the members, and she's also returning from last year. All of these 3 students we got to keep for an extra year, so that's been super fun for me. They've reviewed the board strategic plan and just kind of from a student perspective have focused in on the priorities of teacher recruitment and retention and post-secondary matriculation. So they have some thoughts that the panel has come to as a group from a student perspective as to how potential ways that these priorities can be addressed. So with that, I will turn it over to them. Mona?
Thank you.
Oh. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Hello, good morning. My name is Sophia Lynn, and I'm currently a senior at Basis Scottsdale High School.
I'm Viviana Trajan. I'm a senior at Arizona College Prep High School.
I'm Caleb Gabrasalase, and I'm a senior at Phoenix Country Day School.
And today we'll be presenting our feedback on the board's strategic plans for 2025.
So the first priority we worked on is the teacher recruitment and retention, and we can start for that. Perfect. So the first thing we propose is a mentorship program for new teachers. So we think that establishing a mentorship program where veteran teachers can mentor new teachers that come and during their first years would be very helpful. We suggest they establish a specific sort of program where we have an SMART plan, SMART, the SMART plan, specific, measurable, achievable, relative, and timely, where teachers once again can receive help from veterans who have been doing the same thing they've been doing for quite a long time. And for the implementation, we suggest conducting a statewide survey where teachers who are in this program could give their feedback on if it's effective and how it's working and if they have any comments or feedback for it.
All right, so the next concept that we'll be discussing is reducing non-teacher burdens for teachers, specifically starting off with teacher obligations. So we think an excellent way in order to lighten the load for teachers is to minimize off-site duties that don't actually pertain to teachers, whether that's paperwork, monitoring, or even substituting for schools. And another great way to actually pinpoint these exact problems that affect teachers is by sending out a survey and finding out which tasks they find to be the most strenuous. Additionally, our other solution was looking at incentivization, whether it's compensating teachers monetarily or even just a small thank you can go a long way. This is incredibly important to help compensate them for their extra time and effort that they spent in these other tasks. And lastly, we find that delegating tasks to security or other personnel is an excellent way to reduce their workload, so that way teachers can focus on the task that they want to do, teaching.
And then another specific problem that we identified was that teachers are being assigned to teach subjects that they're not fully well versed in. So we thought subject-specific teacher training could be really beneficial for teachers who may be assigned to a different subject because of teacher shortages. So we think standardizing subject-specific teacher training across the state of Arizona can really help with those specific educational foundations for teachers. And we also wanted to extend this to ELL and special education training. So this can expand to everything from assistive technology to collaboration with support staff, along with individualized education programs and instructional strategies to make sure that all students in Arizona, regardless of their background, really feel comfortable and supported by their teachers in school. And then lastly, we wanted to make teachers aware of the grants that are currently available for them to pursue further education. We were introduced to a lot of different programs like the Arizona Teachers Academy and Arizona Education Workforce Scholarship Program, which gives teachers grants to pursue their further education through masters. And I think it's really beneficial to making sure that teachers really have that passion and incentivization to stay in their jobs.
Perfect. So our next suggestion is recognizing and appreciating our teachers. Specifically, we think that implementing recognition programs with incentives like giving teachers leadership roles or maybe even stipends would be very good. We think that even creating monthly Teacher of the Month programs like we have for Students of the Month here, like we had today, would be really good. Even like regionally where more teachers are recognized, we think that'd be really effective and it could highlight standout educators. And we also think that we should create initiatives to create more appreciation for our teachers, maybe holding appreciation events and awards to boost morale and elevating the status of our teachers and showing how crucial and important they are to the state of Arizona and our future generation. And then we also really think that utilizing thank you notes and public recognition at board meetings or even statewide reminders to show ongoing appreciation would be very good. Obviously, we can't force every single student to write thank you notes for their teachers. But if we encourage even some students to write thank you notes to their teachers, that could go a very, very long way.
All right, next we'll go into teacher pay and incentivization. So a big issue regarding teacher retention, the obvious answer is to increase pay and benefits. We've seen this throughout our nation. So whether it's offering better incentives through increased pay and benefits to attract and retain students in Arizona, we had more specific solutions as well and other things that we could also do. By ensuring teacher benefits such as health insurance and extending it to family members, we can ensure that these metrics are actually standard across districts so that all teachers are able to retain these benefits. But second, by reevaluating our current pay structure and utilizing methods that are based on property taxes, we are able to further reduce disparities between urban and rural teacher salaries. This way, it actually equates to their living wages, and we're able to ensure a better quality of life. And lastly, we want to ensure that we're promoting existing grants and funding opportunities to support teacher pay and incentives. And lastly, some other things that we can do, like we previously talked about, is make the experience of teaching so much better when we reduce administrative workloads by kind of not utilizing non-teacher related work opportunities, and also encouraging teachers to look at other avenues for career growth and making sure that they feel heard so that they're able to continue their line of work as a teacher.
All right, so our next main category beyond teacher retention is post-secondary matriculation, persistence, and attainment. And our first main solution for that is to expand dual enrollment in AP/IB programs at high schools across Arizona. So our main goal here is to expand these programs specifically to smaller schools in Arizona. As someone who goes to a charter school that has a very strong AP curriculum, I've personally seen the benefits and know that it will carry me pretty far into college. So I think that it's really important that we promote these programs so that every student has these equal opportunities to make this path to pursuing secondary education easier. So first of all, we would love to promote dual enrollment programs as ways to make the transition to college easier, because it essentially gives students not only a more increased access to specific topics that may be more niche in college curriculum, but it also makes it so that students are able to see what college life and what college classes and professors are like, while also making college a cheaper option. And then additionally, there are a lot of teacher benefits that we can bring up. So specifically, a lot of schools have financial benefits for student scores, for AP scores. Like at my charter school, I think teachers get an extra $200 for every 5 on AP exams. And that helps a lot with incentivization for teachers and students both. And making sure that accessible resources are available for all schools who do not currently have AP and IB curriculum can also be extremely helpful, especially because AP and IB programs are standardized. So there already are a lot of resources online.
Perfect. So our next proposal is increasing the availability of counselors. There are some schools in Arizona that have around 1,000 or even more kids per grade, specifically seniors. And there's one college counselor, which is just impossible to get any support. So we definitely recommend increasing the student to college counselor ratio for more personalized support. We also think by hiring more counselors to ensure each student gets the attention they need, we can solve that. And then more than just giving college counseling, we think that we should expand counseling services to include career options and personal development, not just academics, like for example, trade school or even just like life advice. We think will go a very long way for students. And then we also think that making visits to college and career advisors mandatory or highly recommended for all seniors. Sometimes when you only have one counselor and there's thousands of kids at one school, it might seem like impossible to get to know your counselor. So even like putting the effort in to do that would be highly recommended.
Kind of adding on to that, we want to promote alternative post-secondary options, particularly in future preparedness. So all schools should be equipped to offer CTE courses, and this is incredibly imperative to showcase the vast opportunities that are outside the norm of a four-year college, whether that's community college, trade school, or even entrepreneurship. And especially in terms of entrepreneurship, where Arizona is ranked 6th in the nation, it's incredibly imperative that we actually allow these opportunities to be available for students to turn their passions into a business. So the main question becomes, how can we integrate these opportunities into our curriculum? And the answer is to tie entrepreneurship education with personal finance, which is already required in our education system. Essentially, when we educate students about finances after high school, they're able to be set up for success, because regardless what path they do choose in life, they do need to be equipped with these skills to live a financially prosperous life. And we aim to do this by increasing the accessibility of resources, whether that's through digital pamphlets, seminars, webinars, or even hands-on activities to show students just how easy or just how many opportunities that are available for them to explore CTE courses or entrepreneurship-related opportunities.
And then we also noticed that a major obstacle to students pursuing secondary education or post-secondary education alternatives was that they didn't know about financial aid and FAFSA opportunities. So given that these programs are made to supplement students and allow them to pursue these opportunities, we think that online webinars and in-person seminars could really help bolster these students' performance and participation in post-secondary education. So schools and statewide organizations could potentially host webinars in collaboration with financial aid professionals that walk through how to fill out the FAFSA step by step with various different Q&A opportunities. So I think there are currently a lot of organizations within Arizona that do focus on specific ideas like financial aid and FAFSA, who would be more than willing to help partner with the board or Department of Education. And beyond FAFSA, especially given that the FAFSA has recently been updated, we think that these online webinars and seminars could really help students have the opportunity to ask questions to professionals and really figure out any issues that they're having with filling out this financial aid. And these events could also cover local, statewide, and national scholarship opportunities for high schoolers to make sure that we're giving high schoolers accessibility to all the resources that currently already exist. And then we also want to make sure that we're taking use of school counselors for the distribution of resources. And we're spreading awareness for online FAFSA resources that already exist, like Ask Benji, the Arizona Board of Regents, local FAFSA experts. And we can do this through flyer, video, or newsletter form, pretty much just getting out the word and making sure students are aware of the opportunities. And that is it.
That's a lot. That is fantastic. I currently have a vacant vice president position at Arizona Western College and would seek your application. We'd love to have you. Superintendent Horn?
I'd like to request a written version of this presentation on real paper, please.
Any other questions or anyone online? Oh, yeah, Member Kravickas, please.
Thank you guys so much. That was so thorough and so informative. I have a question. I absolutely agree that we need more counselors. But until we get there, I've often wondered, how do you guys think we could better leverage social media apps, some way to get information into the hands of kids, knowing that we all pretty much live on that phone? Is there a way that we can do that? Is there an app that can be designed? Is it social media? How can we help distribute all that great information you guys talked about?
Perfect. So I think that this could be done in a couple of ways. a good example one is that a lot of schools are starting to, like colleges are starting to create podcasts to talk about their admissions process, what it's like to apply, how to write their essays and answer them. So maybe like a podcast where we go talk about like what you should do if you want to get into college, like what courses you should get done if you want to go into a state school, the requirements, etc. I think a podcast could be good, but also posting like Instagram or like posts on other social media to tell kids about opportunities that are available, deadlines for applying to colleges, what information they need, when to ask teacher recommendations letters, how many they need, which kinds of teachers they should ask. So all these informations that like are available online, just making them more concise and like social mediable. But yeah.
And I think peer-to-peer support within schools also has a lot of power. I know specifically at my school, we have an ambassadors program where we try to match like students, underclassmen in high school with upperclassmen, and they can provide a lot of scholarship opportunities and tips on how to apply to college and things like that. And I think having those resources within the school often helps build that community. And we also use a variety of online resources. Like we have a QR code that has a list of different scholarships that students can apply to, because I think a lot of the time students are looking out for these opportunities. It's just an issue of where to find them.
I would also just say, I think with like kind of like a shorter attention span, something as simple as like those like little Instagram posts, or for me, I look at like LinkedIn and stuff like that. So when you see like the kind of posts like pop up, it kind of catches students' attention. Also, just having like teachers, like English teachers, do a pretty excellent job of posting things on like Google Classroom. So seeing those opportunities kind of ignites something in a student to apply.
Dr. Clay, I see your hand. Would you like to ask a question or make a comment, please?
I would. First, my comment is excellent and amazing briefing. I have a copy of the slides on my iPad, and I've been writing notes. And I love some of your planning and recommendations. My question is, I'd like you to consider, or would you consider mentoring other student advisory councils within the state? For example, we have one down in Cochise County, and we've just started, and it's 5th grade to 12th grade, and they are very, we have a lot of rigorous conversation, but to have one of you come and help facilitate, or even when we have our leadership conference in December, you come down and just talk to them about mission and voice and perspectives and all these other different things. I would really like you to consider that, and maybe later we can talk about that. But you guys are just on point, and I'm going to show a clip of this at our meeting. We have a meeting Saturday. And if I can get a clip of this to show my students, this would be great, because it's a great model to everyone else in the state of just giving them some direction on how to do things. So thank you very much. And I am going to share my county strategic plan with those students. I never thought about doing that. That is amazing. And I, you guys are very, very honest about how you see things, and you're thinking out of the box. And sometimes as adults, we're kind of in the box, but you definitely give us a bigger perspective of thinking outside the box. So thank you very much for all that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Any other question or comments from my colleagues? Once again, I want to express Executive Director Ross, please.
My apologies, Dr. Cord. Just as a matter of follow-up, board staff will capture the sort of main points of the presentation, as well as the slide deck. We'll send it to board members along with the most recent draft of the strategic plan for you all to consider and provide feedback on. So this will be melded into that draft strategic plan. So I just wanted the student advisory panel to know what the next steps are as well.
Thanks again. Wonderful job. Nicely done.
Perfect. And then I just wanted to say a quick thank you. Like, I guess we wanted to say a quick thank you to Mrs. Etz. Like, none of this would be possible without her support. Like, she's always available whenever we have questions. She answers as fast as she can. She advises us through everything. Like, this would not be available or exist without Mrs. Etz's support. So thank you very much. Like, you mean a lot for us.
That was great. You read it just like she wrote it. Nicely done. Thank you so much. Maybe we'll do one more agenda item before a quick break. So I'll move us on to 5B. This is a presentation and discussion by the Phoenix Police Department of online threats to schools and strategies for schools to address threats for information only. Once again, Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As you all know, schools are facing an exponentially growing number of threats, particularly online threats, both nationwide and statewide. As a result of that, several board members asked for a presentation addressing those threats from law enforcement. I just want to thank Member Meyerson for connecting me with Detective Romero, and especially thank Detective Romero for being here and being so giving of his time.
All right, good morning.
Good morning.
So you guys couldn't have put me before all these brilliant students that that I get to follow here. So thank you for having me here. As I said, Detective Romero with the Phoenix Police Department. I have 23 years on the department. I have been in patrol. I served as a school resource officer for a few years as well. And now I work for the Violent Crimes Bureau, where our unit is tasked with the various school crimes and school threats that come through for the city. So here today, I'm here to talk to you about what we consider to be best practices. Obviously, they agreed, my chain of command agreed for me to go ahead and speak today. This isn't hard facts. This is just what we believe to be best practices with these school threats. Plain and simple to get started, school threats are not a joke. Especially in today's day and age. And people seem to think that they are. A lot of the kids that we end up talking with and dealing with think it's just a joke. But they affect not only the school, but the community, law enforcement, as you can see nationwide. Our chart, is this for me or?
Yeah, we'll bring that chart up right there.
Okay, so this chart that I provided here, it's very difficult to see right now. But this is just for the city of Phoenix. This is no other agency out there. So we have been documenting school threats.
Sorry, you speaking.
Sorry, we have been documenting school threats, if we can get that back up, since 2018. This is all social media based. Our common social media platforms, obviously Instagram, Snapchat. Now that TikTok is blown up, we're also getting TikTok coming through. And this other little app called Discord. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. Okay. So as you can see, since 2018, for a school year, we averaged in the city of Phoenix alone, we averaged 300 to 400 of these calls per year. That's during the 9-month school period. Let's go ahead and go all the way to the end of the chart for this year. As you can see, September of this year was an anomaly. We had 83 school threats that came through that we needed to investigate. So obviously that spiked interest statewide, also within the city, and we obtained a lot of phone calls on this. We're still trying to figure out why, but as you can see on our graphs, every September, there's a peak. There's a peak every September. I don't know if that's because it's getting close to the end of the quarter, midterms, if they still even have those, I don't know. Right. Kids are wanting to get out of school or whatnot. But as you can see on our chart, every September there's a spike. And again, this is just the city of Phoenix. This isn't anybody else across the state. So I can only provide numbers for what we do. So we have I also provided a few slides of some school threats. Could we get those up, please? Through social media.
Detective Romero, we went with just one,
Okay.
as an exemplar. So
Excellent. I
Melissa will
wasn't
bring
sure.
that
I
up.
provided a few just to see what we have here. I'm sure most of you have seen them that come through on social media. So our biggest concern when we start looking at these is we get questions from the schools all the time. Are these credible? We have no idea when they first come through. What does credible mean? And us in the city of Phoenix, we will not ever say if a threat is credible. We treat every one of these as if something is possible and can it happen. We will investigate all of this. Some, let's see, which one do we have here? High school, middle school, schoolers be ready. Give you guys this last hug to your loved ones. We will be shooting up the school at 11 p.m. Thursday or Friday. And it was attached with these firearms here, this photo. part of our process is sometimes kids will process or post these and they'll use images that they find on the internet. Okay, so we have a way to go on and we look at that image, we'll put it through the system and find out if we'll basically just call it a Google image for all intents and purposes. And if it doesn't come up anywhere, then it tells us, oh no, they probably have access to this or it came from somewhere. It's more what we consider a live photo, okay, something that was taken either within themselves or with their families. So when we get these school threats that come through, we have to act on them immediately. The way they come through to the city of Phoenix, is a few different ways. If they're in the evenings, most of the time, which a lot of these come through, it's parents that are calling either our Crime Stop non-emergency number, or sometimes they're actually calling 911. So patrol officers will respond to these. They'll make an initial report. They come to our bureau and they get assigned. Another way that these are reported is through what we call the ACTIC Center, the Counterterrorism Intelligence Center. FBI gets involved. There are keywords for Instagram and these other social media types that will see these keywords and they'll notify the FBI. Then the FBI will vet them somewhat and then contact the appropriate agency, notify them, hey, this threat was made. Has it been reported yet? And if it hasn't, then it gets started at that level as well. So when we see these and they come through, obviously, if they're in the evenings, it affects the community. It affects those that are at home. What we ask is that for the schools to get these messages out to their students and their parents, if a student receives this at home, we ask that that student and or that parent call police immediately, no matter what jurisdiction it is. Don't wait till you get to school the next morning, 6, 8, 10 hours later. Call immediately from home so that we can get started vetting this type of threat. It's a drain on the school. These affect the schools. At one point, we just made an arrest where 13 schools were mentioned within the Metro Phoenix area. Due to that, there were over 1,000 kids that missed school. Okay, so the schools are affected. Absolutely. Other students are. Students that are in school aren't paying attention. They're worried, could this happen or not? But it's become such a mainstay now here within the community. A lot of parents, they don't know what to do. They're scared. Do we send our kids? Do we not send our kids to school? What's happening here? So, excuse me. So obviously the fear within the community is stoked highly, and now it affects the schools. Not only are the students not showing up, but schools are now becoming inundated with phone calls from parents. So now their phones are busy. They can't attend to what they need to, and then they're trying to explain what's going on, that they've been in contact with law enforcement or not, or whether or not they've been in contact with law enforcement. So let me see. Sorry, I'm kind of looking at some of these things here. So not only are the schools victims, also are the students who receive these threats, that see them, their families that are reporting them. Those individuals that initially see it, they are victims, the way that the statute reads and how we see them here within the city. And let's see, do we have that link for our statute?
We do, Melissa. It's
All
in
right,
the
so
agenda.
what we started doing, unfortunately, there has to be consequences to these when we investigate them. They take a lot of time. There's anywhere from 5 to 8 warrants that can be written through social media back and forth until we can locate who is responsible for posting this threat. So for the city of Phoenix, and what we started doing here is we started charging this class 3 felony for terroristic threats. Well, that is not our right statute. We need a 0.02 behind the 8. Okay, so it's 13-2308.02, which is terroristic threats. I'm going to just summarize it for you folks. Making terroristic threats. So that is a class 3 felony. And basically all that this says is that you have used some type of communication to terrorize and place fear into the community and or a person. When you're using an electronic device, these phones, we call them phones, but they're no longer phones. They're computers that have the ability to make a phone call, right? Because you can do everything you need to do off this phone. Now they are electronic devices. So when we look at these, and that's why we say that this isn't a joke. There's part of the statute that says if you're joking whether or not you have the means to do it, you have still violated that particular statute. So it is still a crime. If you look up the FBI and you run school threats to the FBI's page, their first thing on there is terroristic threats are not a hoax. They're not a joke. It's a crime. So that's where we navigate a lot of our information from. So we like to try to partner up with the schools. As I said, I've been involved with them for an extensive period of time. And the way we see it is that if the school is going to call us, because let's say that the student or parent shows up at the school and then notifies them. Well, we don't necessarily want that parent to go all the way home to make the call again from home. So now we're wasting time. But if the school becomes aware of it, what we ask is a partnership with the schools. So when that student is identified that says, hey, this is the report or this is what we have seen on social media, this is the report or the threat towards our school, we know that there are internal investigations that the school needs to do. We understand that. But what we ask is for this partnership here is to notify us immediately and allow us to get on scene so that we can start doing what we call preservation requests. We can start securing accounts on social media to make it a little easier for us, right? So that we're not going through this big old web. And when that happens, allow us to start the investigation. What we ask is that the principal that needs to, or vice principal, whoever is going to be responsible for doing the administrative side of the school, what we ask is that they are in partnership with us, allow us to lead the investigation, and they can be witnesses sitting in there, and they will be able to obtain basically all the information they need for your internal reports. That way that we can make it clean and we're not violating any rights or any of the students, because at the end of the day, we have to do what's right for everybody, for the student, the person that we're talking to. And so that way we can facilitate this and get this taken care of a lot faster. Essentially what will happen is if we get notified at the end of the day from administration and they've talked to 5 kids and have released them, well, that doesn't do us as law enforcement any good or to help the school, because now we have to contact all 5 of those students, all 5 of those families, and we have to track them all down. And then some of them at that point, they've gone to work with mom or dad, or they've done something else, and it makes it very difficult. So now we're even further behind the clock to get started on these types of reports. So what we ask is that we speak with or get the message out to the districts, the principals, all the administration, that as soon as we get this, and if it's something that's reported at the school, the first phone call that needs to be made is to law enforcement. I know that the district safety folks and the superintendents want to be notified first. I understand that that's the desire, but what we're asking for is that we get called immediately so that we can get started on this and start this process to figure out what direction we need to go. So we covered that. I see. Okay, so if we do have to take one of those reports and we're communicating with the administration, again, for our department, our best practice is we notify and then we continue updates as the investigation is going. So at the end of it, and then at the end, if we make an arrest, we notify. If we cannot and we cannot determine who essentially made the threat, we will also come back and notify. We need to keep the school as informed. I'll say again, because if this is taking 3 weeks, or I'm sorry, 3 days to a couple of weeks, it's still affecting the schools. So we need to work with them as well. If we're asking them to work with us, we need to also reciprocate that and provide information as we go. It's not a secret. There's certain things obviously we cannot divulge because it's an ongoing investigation, but we do a pretty good job of circling back and providing that information to everybody. Lastly, a few things here to sum this up here is we ask that possibly this be added into the policies now moving forward, since it's such a national event of the schools, possibly in the parent handbook, that there's going to be a zero tolerance on campuses for this type of information, what possible consequences the students may receive or parents from the schools. Again, this is a request that we have. We know that we can't demand it, but maybe get more of that information out to the parents that way. We obviously post that on our social media, but let's be honest, not everybody's following the Phoenix PD social media, right? So if we can get the schools to start posting it on their social media, school threats are not a joke. There can be consequences. We can list the statutes that are there. And at the end of this, our goal is not to have to arrest kids and take them and put them away. Our goal is to get the information out there so that we don't have to do that. If a child is detained for this and it goes through the court process and they are found adjudicated for this felony offense, the new law that went into effect last year, that parent can be fined up to $10,000 now for this. Okay, so there's a financial means now behind this for parents, for their kids grabbing a phone or a tablet and putting these quote unquote jokes, hoaxes on social media. Doesn't mean every parent's going to get fined 10,000. No, that is the limit that a parent can be fined for that. And the last thing that we ask is continue to press with the parents is that parents monitor your kids' phones, monitor their social media, know what they're doing, know who they're talking to, just be involved with your kids when it comes to these electronic devices.
Great.
Okay. I think that's about it. I summed it up as best as we could here. And
thank you.
Any
No,
other
I
questions?
appreciate your time. And so I guess the great unknown is when to close the school, right? And you showed hundreds of these, and obviously we can't close the school, but what are the primary factors when an administrator in conjunction with law enforcement would actually close the school?
I wish I had an answer for you on that as well. We've talked about that. We can't ever tell a school when to close. That's not our policy. We can make suggestions. What has happened recently, we haven't had any schools close. They've been notified. Certain schools have gone to the extent of hiring off-duty officers on campus as soon as they find out about this threat. So now the school's incurring another cost at their expense to have uniformed police officers on campus in an off-duty capacity. They're sending out I call them the PSA, right? Phone calls or emails,
Sure.
text messages from there. So as I knock on wood here, the majority of what we are experiencing right now is that we have not seen a threat posted that has said it's going to happen on a certain day and time.
Got it.
But we cannot take that chance. And I say that really reluctantly because,
yeah,
right. I mean, we can't be held to that. However, what we ask is that the school, take their measures and either if they have security, some schools have security guards, get more security guards. They have security guards that work through their districts, notify them. And again, as soon as we notify, as soon as we find out, we notify them. We notify the schools immediately.
Any of my colleagues with questions or Superintendent Horn?
Yeah, you mentioned that making a threat is a class 3 felony. What is bringing a gun to school? What kind of felony is that?
So that's a great question. There's a misconception. So if an adult brings a firearm onto a campus, it's a class 1 misdemeanor. Now, again, a couple of years ago, the law changed on that if you are in pickup and drop off with your firearm, that's allowable now, as to where before it was not. So if it's a child that brings a minor, so anybody that's obviously 18 or 17 or under, if they are found in possession of a firearm, it's a class 6 felony for a minor in possession of a firearm.
And we have some school board members that have an ideology where they try not to get police, and they don't want police involved with their students, which I think is very bad philosophy, but it exists.
Yes, sir.
So if the student brings a gun to school and the district does not report it to the police, is that an offense?
So there's part of the duty to report, yes, sir. So if we're not reporting certain offenses, obviously we can address that issue.
So what kind of felony or misdemeanor is a failure to report when one has a duty to do so?
So in those types, without looking at the statute, I want to say that it's a misdemeanor for that offense of not reporting. If it's a mandatory reporting where administration is not reporting as a mandatory reporter for child abuse, child sexual abuse, those types of cases, that's a class 6 felony, I believe. That's another bureau or another unit that deals with those with us. So
If a student brings a gun to school, is that mandatory reporting?
it's duty to report.
Duty report?
Yes, sir.
So if the
understanding.
school does not report it or the district does not report it, is that a misdemeanor then?
So
Or a class 6 felony?
It actually is not. The way the statutes are written, it is not a duty or a chargeable offense, an ARS offense. So if they don't report that they confiscated drugs, that is a class 1 misdemeanor, I believe, for not reporting that they've confiscated drugs off of a student.
What about a gun?
No, sir.
Dr. Cordes, Superintendent Horn,
Yeah,
members of the board.
please go ahead.
I just don't want to put Detective Romero on to remember a statute, you know, if he doesn't have it in front of him, but we can get that for you, Superintendent Horn. Board staff will get that for you after the meeting.
Dr. Clay, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your presentation on what you're doing up there in Phoenix. My question is, what type of communication and interopportunity response capability do you currently have with your schools and in the school districts? And my concern is, you know, we have the before the bang, during the bang, and after the bang when it comes to school safety. So, you know, in Cochise County, we look at the before the bang big time. Of course, we have things in place for during the bang and after the bang. But my concern now is what is your relationship with your superintendents in your schools? And does the public know that there is a relationship and is there some sort of interoperability where there's two-way communications during a bang?
So speaking for in my experience, no, I do not have communication with the superintendents. The majority of my communication is going to be with the principals. Occasionally, I will have a superintendent that reaches out asking questions. But due to the fact there's over 700 schools in the city of Phoenix, so it's quite large. So that could improve, absolutely. But at this point in time, the majority of our contact is going to be with the principal of that particular school that we're dealing with.
My last question is, do you have anything in place? You know, we have Navigate 360 in place, and I know there's another one out there that a lot of other schools and the sheriff or the police departments are using to ensure that there's two-way communication through 911, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Do you guys have any type of communication system like that in Phoenix?
Not that I'm aware of. And again, I would say that due to the fact that we have so many districts and schools here, they all use different forms of communication, different types of apps or whatnot. So we just communicate with admin, and then typically the administration will ask us, is it okay for us to send out our notifications now? And then we will try to give our guidance with that as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I also enjoyed your chart. That is very good information. And thank you for all you do. Thank you for your service in protecting us and our students.
Thank you.
And Member Meyerson.
Thank you. Thank you, Detective Romero, for coming today and for your presentation. I think in hearing you speak, something that also struck me is that in some respects, this is also just a social media problem of middle schoolers and high schoolers just reposting things that they think their friends posted or that, to your point earlier, that it's just a joke. Is there programming that either like we as a board can look at, that the Phoenix Police Department is looking at, that can support schools in supporting parents with social media kind of awareness, restrictions, anything that you would recommend either that we as a board look at or that Phoenix PD is looking at that we could try and get in the hands of schools to support parents with how to support their kids with social media? Well, my child will not have social media until she's like past college, but
I know, right?
It'll
I
be
hear
very
you.
cool. But
Let me know how that works
yeah,
out for you.
keep you posted, but not a big deal.
So typically what we've relied on within the city of Phoenix is presentations, whether it be by a school resource officer, a school safety officer. Some schools have reached out to us and asked, is there anybody that can come out and give a presentation to our families? I have done those presentations where I've gone out to a school after hours when they've had a parent meeting, and we, get the big whiteboard or screens on, and we'll give some type of presentation. So this year has just been an anomaly again with the amount of threats that have come through. So it's hyper focused right now. Everybody's hyper focused on it. So the city of Phoenix, our unit, we started tracking these, I believe, what was it, 2018, 2019. So we were kind of ahead of the curve on that. After Parkland, we saw things were a lot different. So we started looking at social media a lot more, trying to understand it. And as you said, reposting and that's something I did forget to mention, is another message to get out is, if we have a student that comes to you, ask them if they've reposted. What's going to be is, obviously, if that student sees it, they repost it, it goes to another, I'm just going to use an arbitrary number, another 1,000 people, and then somebody else from there. So next thing we know, we have this huge web of mess that we have to work through to get back. And ultimately, if you've posted it and have reposted it, you also could be responsible and held criminally liable for that as well, because now you're reaching a whole new group of people that you're now incited fear in, or these terrorist thoughts. So for us here, we're open to doing presentations, when we can. Obviously, the availability and having the availability to do them. Okay.
Member Catanese.
Thank you, Dr. Corr. Thank you, Detective Romero. I just had a question for you in terms of what would you recommend for schools to do in terms of making their campus safe? Like, what different things would you put in place to make sure that, God forbid something happens? What things have you guys talked about that are the recommendations for schools? Because I know that every single school has their own methods, every single school has their own capabilities. But if we were to kind of do something statewide to make sure that we are protecting and just making school as safe as we can, what would you recommend?
Well, that's very difficult to answer. Obviously, different areas of the state have different abilities and resources, right? Just like ourselves, everybody's understaffed, not only law enforcement wise, but teachers, right? Schools. So part of this presentation is why we agreed to do this, is try to maybe get some of this information out that we're talking about today to statewide and again, best practices is what we're asking. Other agencies may not completely agree with what we're doing, and I understand and respect that, but we believe these to be the best practices out there. In terms of safety, here within our agency, we do have a unit that will go out and do safety walkthroughs of the school to look at perimeter fencing, ingress, egress, items like that. They do the safety walk for the safety plans. In addition, if you have the ability and you are looking for it, you can look at hiring off-duty security guards, off-duty police officers for that presence on campus. That just gives that overall for the community, the campus, the parents, a little bit more that feeling of, hey, our campus is a little bit safer because we have somebody here on campus. The other thing I would say for safety reasons is be open and communicative with your local agency. Sometimes we get a lot of resistance when we go to campus, and I understand that because they think that we're just there to arrest kids, and we're not. Especially here in Maricopa County, our juvenile center, our correctional center, they're reformative. They're not punitive. So if a kid goes through the system here, a child, they look at getting resources to that child and that family to help them not ever have to come back to the court system. So if it's open and we can put some other information out there, obviously we can maybe grab a few officers from different agencies and collaborate and try to put out some other best practices that are out that would be beneficial for us statewide.
Member Kervikis. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Catanese, did you have a follow-up?
I did. Just because 2.5 years ago we had our first shooter threat at our school, And I say our first because like we've also had different threats, as many schools have had on social media that are just, it causes so much fear, it causes so much turmoil, it causes so much, I guess, all of your time, all your resources are then all of a sudden just turned to just, are we doing everything possible to keep our kids safe? And I 2 years ago to now, like when we first had that, we were kind of just told like stay in your classroom, close your door. Now we have door covers. Now we have different abilities to alert our front office or the police department, like secretly and silently. And I know that in the Georgia shooting that happened a month or two ago, the teacher was actually able to alert silently where exactly everything was. But what I worry about is that not every school has that capability. Not every school has that ability to keep up with every single thing that we're coming out with that is going to make our kids safe. And so I guess this is also just more so a question for like the state as a whole. How can we ensure that every single school is safe for our kids? Because that's the most important thing, is just making sure that everything is safe. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Katniss. Member Kervikis.
Thank you so much for your presentation, as disturbing as it is. Is what's happening here in Phoenix consistent with what's happening nationally?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's not bad, good or bad. But my second question is, how do most of these turn out? Are most of these unfounded? Are they hoax? Do you keep that kind of data?
So I would say unfounded, as in we have not we have not obtained evidence during one of these investigations at this point in time of, say, a manifest, or as you've seen in other shootings that have occurred. Again, I give praise and thanks, and I continue to pray every day that we have not had that issue here in Phoenix or in our metropolitan area. So we investigate these. We go out to the homes. We make contact with parents. We ask questions about access to firearms. And obviously, if you're legally allowed to possess a firearm, and if we were now contacting you about your child, are you making steps to ensure that, okay, that child does not have access to said firearm? So I kind of forgot the rest of your question. So
Oh,
sorry
no,
about that.
I think you answered part of it, but I feel like
Yeah.
there's a step in between. So manifest, I'm assuming, means an event actually occurs. But there's that step before. Was it a hoax, or were they serious? Luckily, they haven't carried it out yet, but were they serious, or was it a hoax?
So the closest that we've come, most of ours have been hoax. The majority have. The closest we have come was a local high school last year where we were alerted, and we ended up taking a high schooler male into custody that had a disassembled AR-15 style weapon on him. And we were able to act soon enough off the information that we received immediately. And luckily, we had great communication with the schools at that time that prevented such a situation. But we believe for us and in Phoenix that was the closest that we have come to having any of these acted out.
Again, thank you for coming. I'm going to close this off here, and just a timely topic, and your expertise is greatly appreciated. I'm going to give us I'll say 10-minute break, because I know I'll have to pull Member Kervikis back to the dais here. I'm going to say a 10-minute break. Did I just say that out loud? So we'll reconvene at 10 minutes to 11 and get through the rest of the agenda. Thanks. All right, I'm going to call us back into session. Looks like we still have all our folks online. Very good.
Can we just, Dr. Cook, can we make sure we have everybody online? So to make sure we have quorum.
Okay.
5, 6, there we go. Member Catney's, Dr. Okay, perfect.
There we
Christopher.
go.
Thank you
Okay.
all so much.
Thank you for that. So I will move us on to our next agenda item, 5C. This is presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding the accountability cut scores for traditional, hybrid, alternative, and Arizona online instruction schools for the 23-24 school year. Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As you'll recall, Sean Smith, the Chief Accountability Officer from the Arizona Department of Education, presented in September on cut scores. The recommendation from all 3 of our technical advisory committees was for prior year cut scores. Usually they only deviate from that if there's a substantial change in one of the inputs of the system, such as a new assessment. So we actually, this is the same format we use every year. We're not asking Sean to come and represent, though he is on hand if there are any questions about cut scores.
Thank you, Executive Director Ross, and thank you, Sean, for being here. Do we have any questions for Sean? Is there a desire? Again, we had a very thorough presentation in September, and I know we've all been staffed individually. Any questions? Hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion that the board approve the 2023-2024 accountability cut scores as presented and direct the Department of Education to release the public file with school and LEA letter grades prior to November 1st of 2024? Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Member Myerson, can I count that as a second, Dr. Clay? Okay, I do have a motion and a second. Any need for discussion? Member Kervikas.
I just want to preemptively explain my vote. I vote yes because of the options given, but I want to continue to reiterate my concern that we're grading on a curve. And we're not giving all schools an opportunity to be an A. And I know we're moving to this new component scoring, so it might be an opportunity to rethink that, but I just want to continue to flag that because I don't think we're basically predetermining how many A, B, C, and D schools there are.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? I have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. I'll move us on to 5D. Presentation, discussion, and possible action to adopt the 2023-2024 accountability appeals process and procedures for a school to appeal its final letter grade. Again, Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. The procedures and policies for the appeals for this letter grade release have been shared with the board. Jessica Mueller, who does an amazing job leading this work for the staff, is here if there are any questions.
Okay. Appreciate you being here, Jessica. Any questions? Comments or concerns? I can't see online. No one online? No? Okay. Hearing none. Do I have a motion that the board adopt the school year 2023-2024 accountability appeals process, procedures, and timelines as presented? Do I have such a motion? Superintendent Horn, do I have a second? Member Myers, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. I'll move us on to 5E. This is for information only. This is presentation and discussion of the TNTP annual report, The Opportunity Makers. Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Kors, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. With us today is Crystal Harmon, who's the president of the board of TNTP, as well as several members of her staff. We're very thankful for them coming out to present this, and this report just was released this month, I believe. So the board is getting a very early look at it. And so, Crystal, thank you so much.
Excellent. Welcome.
All right. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for having me here this morning or this afternoon. My name's Crystal Harmon, and I'm the president at TNTP. TNTP is a national education nonprofit, and we focus on research, policy, and practice to ensure that our young people can thrive academically so they can thrive in their lives. We currently work in over 6,000 school districts across 41 states. And as you can see from this slide, we have deep partnerships here in the great state of Arizona. I want to introduce you to a few colleagues I have in the audience today. First, Leticia De Lavara, who is our Chief of Policy, Engagements, and External Affairs, and lives right here in Phoenix, and Carmen Orozco, who leads our work in Arizona. I know that I can speak for both of them and all of my colleagues at TNTP when I say Arizona's priorities are our priorities. Like you, we work very hard to follow the data to improve student outcomes. And like you, we are actively working to prepare our next generation of young people to lead the kind of lives that our education systems promise them. Some of you might know TNTP from our 2018 report, The Opportunity Myth. In this report, we followed 4,000 students across 5 school systems and found that overall, our young people, our students, have very clear goals. You heard many of them today in the audience this morning, and they show up at school every day doing what is asked of them. But we also found that most students are spending their time in school without access to 4 key resources. First, grade-appropriate assignments. Second, strong instruction. Third, deep engagement. And fourth, teachers with high expectations. Now, this is true for all students, but it is even more true for our most vulnerable populations. I think we can all agree that this is unacceptable. Every young person deserves a chance to learn on grade level. So often, this is the difference between a young person who graduates high school and can go on to college or a career of their choosing, and a young person who graduates without the basic skills necessary to enter the workforce. This means that the priorities that each of you have set in the Arizona State Board of Education's 2024 strategic plan are extremely important. Increasing access to college, reading on grade level, providing personal supports for students with disabilities, and ensuring students have access to teachers with high expectations. These are the fundamental building blocks of our young people's future, and I applaud you for identifying them and for focusing on them. Okay. Today, I'm going to briefly share learnings from our newest report, The Opportunity Makers. I'm also going to share concrete steps that state leaders and educators can set to help far more schools and students learn on grade level so that all of Arizona's young people are graduating prepared for the lives they hope to lead. In our newest report, we studied a variety of schools that are successfully shifting outcomes for young people by dramatically accelerating student learning. Here's what we found. Statistically speaking, most students who fall behind stay there. And we heard a sobering statistic this morning about new reading scores. So we looked at 28,000 schools where the average student was behind grade level. And of 28,000 schools, only 1,300, that is 5%, helped kids catch up. I want to just reiterate that point. Of 28,000 schools where kids were behind, only 5% helped them catch up on grade level. That is 95% that does not do that. So this is the bad news. This is terrible news. This is the kind of news that holds young people back from thriving. But I promise I did not fly across the country to come here and deliver a bunch of bad news to all of you. The good news is that it does not have to be this way. We know how to catch students up to grade level. In the schools we studied in that 5%, students grew more than 1.3 years each year. These schools did that consistently, and they did that for all students, students of all subgroups. We call these schools trajectory changing schools because they change the outcome of a student's life. We wanted to figure out what these schools were doing differently so we could adopt their practices at scale. In education, we spend a lot of time asking what is going wrong. What we wanted to do in this report at TNTP was ask what is going right. So we define these trajectory changing schools as the ones where the average student was not on grade level in the initial tested grade, and then made 1.3 years worth of learning each year. Now you can look, oh, I am on the wrong, there we go, sorry about that. You can look at the difference on this graph between a student who makes up time by gaining more than a year every year and a student who stays behind and stays where they are. At this kind of growth rate at 1.3 years, students, whether they're entering elementary school or entering middle school, very likely will catch up by the time they exit school. That is a life-changing difference for these young kids. Okay, now I'm on the right slide. To understand how these schools achieve these results, we did a deep dive into 7 schools. They were as different as they could be. They were elementary and middle, very different contexts, urban, suburban, and rural. We selected for that kind of geographical diversity and different school models. And in fact, 2 of the 7 trajectory changing schools are right here in the Tucson Unified School District. And Arizona is the only state in our report that is mentioned twice. So I just want to stop and pause there for a moment so we can celebrate the successes. They are worth celebrating. Once we identified our 7 schools, we sought out diverse perspectives from leaders, from teachers, from parents, and from students. We collected quantitative data, so from things like observations and surveys, and qualitative data from interviews and focus groups during several extended visits throughout the school year. Despite their differences, we found that these 7 schools all prioritized 3 things: belonging, consistency, and coherence. I realize that at first glance, this sounds like the most common of common sense, but the cumulative effects of belonging, of consistency, and coherence are profound. These schools create a powerful baseline experience for every single student, regardless of their background, regardless of their abilities, and regardless of their unique needs. And as a result, the good days at school stack up. The first common factor we saw was belonging. Belonging is really a prerequisite for learning. And belonging is relational and it is structural. It is built by school-wide policies and practices. The Arizona Chronic Absence Task Force just released a report identifying belonging as a key ingredient to a positive school culture, which is foundational to learning. A positive climate with a strong sense of belonging makes it more likely that kids will show up day after day. In trajectory changing schools, educators really put students at the center of everything they do. Students were known as individuals rather than members of a group. And this happens when schools create intentional systems and supports to ensure that everyone in that building, from the leader to additional staff, understand the needs of each student. The focus on each student extends into the way schools collect data. Teachers work in teams to identify needs and provide personal support. Data collection does not need to be complicated. It does not need to be expensive. It does not require some technology platform. In one of the schools that we followed, they printed out learner profiles in a room and looked at them each day. Another school utilized a table in Microsoft Word. What matters is not the complexity of your system, but that you are breaking down data by individual student and that you're using it consistently. The other thing these schools did was focus on growth over time, not simply in short-term intervals. One principal said, do you judge the team at halftime or when the game is over? You have to look at the longer trajectory for students. In most schools, it is true that students trust their teacher. But the result of creating belonging in this way is that students trust their entire school. I'm a very proud mom. I have 3 kids of my own, one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary school. And this is what I want for my children. I want them to go to school every day and be known as learners. I want them to feel supported, to do the hard work that they need to learn and grow. Belonging is not separate from academics. It is not 9th period. It is foundational and it is essential for children. The second factor we saw was consistency. Day in and day out, students were engaged with strong instruction, they were challenged by grade level content, and they were held to high expectations. In trajectory changing schools, students engage with same level assignments with access to different support when they need it. So for example, one lesson we observed at CE Rose in Tucson, 2 students, 2 different levels, worked on the same text and practiced persuasive writing together. One had different support before so they could engage in the lesson, but they were both held to grade level expectations and the bar of doing grade level work. To minimize variation across classrooms, instructional leaders reinforce school expectations with regular walkthroughs. With explicit standards and focused feedback, it is easier for students and it's easier for teachers to hit a consistent bar in classrooms. And more good news, increasing consistency is enough. It is enough to move the needle. It is enough to boost the average lesson from okay to good or strong. And it's enough to improve student experiences over days and then weeks and then months. Okay. Our data show that 9 out of 10 lessons in these trajectory changing schools are strong or good, compared to only 5 out of 10 lessons that we observed in our research in the opportunity myth. It is not the occasional great day that makes or breaks these schools. It is the cumulative effect of good days that really makes all the difference. That's what our kids need, not a few isolated experiences of excellence, but steady and good instruction day in and day out. To help young people catch up, we need policies that raise the bar for instruction and minimize variation across classrooms. Every lesson, every day matters. Our kids only have one chance at 1st grade, at 2nd grade. We get a lot of do-overs as adults in this world. Our young people do not have that kind of luxury. While the schools that we studied had different curricular approaches, it is absolutely true that adopting a strong shared curriculum makes it much easier for teachers to consistently deliver grade level content. It reduces the time they have to spend piecing things together or creating their own materials, and it frees them up to do the vital work of the intellectual preparation for teaching. The third factor in these schools was coherence. Elements of an instructional program all working together in beautiful harmony to support the work that young people are doing. In the schools that we studied, in the trajectory changing schools we studied, Tier 1 content shapes everything. It shapes the student experience for classes, tutoring, intervention, and at home. Leaders make space for teachers to focus on the highest important tasks, and parents and families know where their students stand and know how to help them at home. When schools build a unified instructional program and set clear priorities, students find their learning experiences to be meaningful and connected. Incoherence, in contrast, creates confusion. It is certainly not intentional. It is often the intent of very good people with very good ideas trying to do too many things at the same time. So in this example, Ethan, who's a 5th grader, is studying different math topics across all of his different contexts, in tutoring, in intervention, and at home. And if you look at this slide, you can see very quickly, Ethan is spending a lot of time on math. It is not necessarily solving his core learning needs. And in fact, Ethan probably feels the target of random acts of instruction. Alarmingly, the students who need support the most, those who are engaged in tutoring and intervention, are often the ones with the most disjointed instructional experiences at school. I want to show you a flipped example here, also using Ethan. So in this example, his instructional experiences directly support that grade level content. They are connected and they are complementary. From the student's perspective, it makes sense. In trajectory changing schools, we heard students say things like, in intervention, I get to see and practice some of the things that I will need to know for class. And then when I get there and I get the hard problems, I can do them. Okay, more good news. Teachers like these practices too. 83% of teachers in trajectory changing schools agreed their school was a good place to teach and learn. That compares to about 69% at schools with average learning. So if we want to recruit and retain excellent teachers, creating this kind of experience will support that effort as well. Schools can focus on building and sustaining belonging, consistency, and coherence for our educator workforce as well. I want to be very clear that I am not here trying to profess some sort of silver bullet to what we're trying to accomplish. That is not the case. There is no silver bullet. But these practices have made thriving possible for young people who were behind. And so these three practices can be applied to schools in any community, in any context, to see those kind of results. When belonging, consistency, and coherence are in place, their efforts are compounded. Now, that doesn't mean that you should start addressing all three at once, and this is actually a very important point. We do not recommend that you start addressing all three of these at the same time as a school leader. It is very important that you spend a moment and figure out where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and pick your right point of entry. Okay. Accompanying this report are resources that we provide to help identify that starting point. So we have a toolkit of action guides for different groups, from teachers to educators, to help think about enacting next steps. We do really recommend a baseline assessment to help schools identify that strength area and that entry point. And we have an action guide for policymakers that's focused on aligning policies, leadership, and funding toward high-value efforts that really lead to profound impact. Instead of a one-size-fits-all solution, we recommend practices that can be customized to suit the needs of any school. We truly believe that every school in this country and every school in Arizona can become a trajectory-changing school, and we hope that you do too. As state leaders who play such a pivotal role in shaping the future of our young people, here's what will matter most as you seek to create more trajectory-changing schools. Support the adoption of high-quality instructional materials and shared curriculum. It makes it easier for our teachers. It raises the bar and allows them to move further. Create a coherent statewide academic strategy. In coherent systems, everyone, from everyone in this room to every teacher in a building, they know what the priorities are, and they're all speaking a common language. Align incentives with the goals that you've set and remove obstacles that are in the way. Make sure that teachers can spend their time dedicated to the important work of teaching. And finally, continue your efforts to strengthen the teacher workforce. When you do these things, you will go further and get there faster. Based on the data we reviewed for the opportunity makers, we didn't find a single trajectory changing system or a single trajectory changing state in our data set yet. It does not have to be that way. We believe it's possible. We believe it's possible in Arizona with your help, and that the change that you all need sits right here in this room with your leadership and the bold actions that you are trying to take, and an opportunity to bring consistency and coherence to every school in the state of Arizona. We hope that you'll connect with us using this QR code where you can learn more about implementing trajectory changing practices, can download all of our free resources, and also stay current on any future insights that we have. Thank you so much. In closing, at TNTP, we look forward to working hand in hand with all of you on building more trajectory changing schools in Arizona.
Thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful presentation. Any comments or questions from my colleagues? Yeah, Member Kravickas, please.
Thank you so much for coming. As well, I've been a big fan of TNTP's work for years and enjoyed all your reports. And the extensive methods that were used in this report were incredibly admirable. So congratulations, and can't imagine how much work it took. I had a couple questions. One was a question I was thinking about in the beginning, you kind of addressed later, but I'd love to hear from you, is how can we improve the sense of belonging for students with disabilities, in particular when they're pulled out, gone to this class? It's very, like you showed Ethan's example. How can we try to improve that?
Well, I think the first is treating all learners like they're learners and belong to your school community. And so when we talk about understanding the student as an individual learner, that's for every student in the building, period, regardless of what classes they get pulled out into, regardless if they have intervention or tutoring, and looking at the data by student to understand where they are at a fairly detailed level, where they are, where they have gaps, and how strategies that teachers are taking in teams together can support the students to meet those needs. I think that core element of teachers not working as individuals, but working collectively as a team is so important when students are working across multiple contexts or being pulled out of class. It can't be that one teacher has one vision and another teacher has another, but they need to work together as a real team to support that learner to meet their goals.
Are the trajectory changing schools utilizing universal design? And then, that something that stood out?
That is a great question. As far as I know, that is not something that stood out, but I would like to just double check that because I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I can follow back up on that and circle back. And we can let you know if any of them are as well.
The improved teacher experience really stood out to me as something we've been talking about, this teacher workforce. It seems like, I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit because I certainly don't want to imply that this is easy work.
Right.
But we're usually talking about class sizes really expensive and more difficult politically. So I just wonder if you could speak to that. You already kind of did, but.
Well, what I personally love about this report and the findings is that we're finally putting out research that is saying, do less. Ask teachers to do less. Make it easier for them and simplify. And I think that is part of what contributes to such a challenging experience for our educators. They are bombarded with every initiative, every new idea, every new program, lots of paperwork and compliance activities. And so if we can focus in and zoom in, if we can give them the resources to raise the floor, focus in on a few things that we know really matter, and make sure they have an opportunity to work in teams with colleagues toward a shared goal, it just makes it a much more pleasant job, frankly. And we saw that bear out in the data.
Thank you. My last comment is almost more to staff, especially as we're rethinking the component scoring of letter grades, and there'll be obviously a big chunk is on growth. Is there a way, and I'm just kind of a hypothetical question, probably more to Jessica since Sean left, but is there a way that we can utilize this 1.3 years growth kind of metric? If we know that that is the number that makes the difference, if we can begin to think about how to incorporate that as a standard, or not standard, but some kind of a criteria as we begin to determine. Because I remember when we first started using growth as a state decades ago under Lisa Keegan, the big question was, how will we ever know how much growth is enough? And your report is saying, this is what we know. So if we now know how much growth is enough, how can we begin to build that into the model?
Yeah, President Core, Superintendent Horn, and members and Member Kravickas, that is something that Sean Smith has examined in the acceleration readiness aspect, but we can look at that in growth in the future as well, and aligning the two measures for the subgroup improvement in acceleration readiness, but as well as the growth, so that high school has that same measure of the 1.3. And I'll present that to him to bring to the committees in consideration for growth.
Thank you, Jessica. Dr. Clay, please go ahead.
Good morning. I had to look and see what the time was. Okay. Good morning. Thank you for that briefing. It was amazing. I'm taking a lot of notes. We appreciate you greatly. My question or request to the board, could you capture this presentation so that I'm going to, I'd like to share this with all the county superintendents so that they can disperse this to their district superintendents. I think this information needs to be purposely put out to our educators. So I would appreciate it if we could get this snip so that we can share. Thank you.
Absolutely, Dr. Clam, making eye contact here with Executive Director Ross, who's nodding vigorously. Yes, we'll absolutely get that out to you. Absolutely, the entire board, of course. Member Meyerson.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was wonderful. I'm continued just like so intrigued by the recommendations and the potential impact that it can have for students. I think one of the things I'm most struck by is the actually one of your last points, which is that you didn't find any district systems that were opportunity makers, so to speak, or that had met all three of those indicators. And I'm curious if you could just speak a little bit more to that in terms of why you believe that is not the case and why this type of coherence and belonging and consistency exists only at the individual school site based on your current research.
Yes, it's a question that we mulled over a lot as an organization. A few things. One, we looked for this kind of growth over time. So these schools demonstrated this kind of growth for over a decade. So there are certainly bright spots. So it's not to suggest that there aren't systems that have had great years, but we wanted to find a place that had really built these practices into their school culture, into the fabric of their school in a way that we had some validity to the strategies being used. And we think it's possible. So my sharing that that we haven't found any systems or state yet are not to suggest that it's impossible. I think it's very, very possible. And we've seen some bright spots in a number of states and a number of districts who are starting to think about not just the individual school level initiatives that are pushed out, but stepping back as a system or stepping back as a state and really clarifying their academic strategy and boiling it down to a few things, and then doing the work of communicating to all the stakeholders. That includes parents, that includes superintendents, that includes teachers regularly about those priorities, about the supports in place, and then looking at all of the other things that happen within that system, whether it's a state system or whether it's a school system, to ask, is this getting in the way? Is this sending a different message, or is this potentially sending a competing message? Do I need to streamline funding? Do we need to streamline? Different states use different sticks and carrots, but those sticks and carrots, however they're used in your context, need to be aligned to advance this. And when there's confusion there, you are going to see educators and leaders act as if they're confused in terms of what's most important. We can't leave it to just incredible school principals to create these sorts of trajectory changing schools. We need to give them the ecosystem and the frame and the cover and the support to do the hard work of leading their schools and for teachers to lead their classrooms.
It's okay. No, that makes sense. I'm curious just how you'd respond to this and more just because I think it's a challenge that we face in my school. Something that I've been thinking about for a while is the idea, and while we know that there's no silver bullet, I think unfortunately yet in education, just the idea of how school systems do set their annual priorities and how to both set those priorities and then have that cascade down into the school system so that it shows up for the principal, the vice principal, the teacher. And I think that process is actually really challenging to both say no to things because there's so many things that we all want to do. And I'm curious if that like kind of education or structure, whether it's for district superintendents, principals, and again, like I kind of don't even want to tell you how much time I've personally spent on this and feel like I still haven't gotten it right. But I don't know, I've sort of been wondering about that as that type of learning, which I think we veer into the instructional often when we're going into schools, and just sort of curious how you'd respond to that as a possible gap that we're seeing. And again, speaking because I know it's my own.
Yeah, saying no to things is, the hardest thing we all do every day. We certainly struggle with that at TNTP as well. I would say two things. One, this is where you can come in as state leaders because it is not an annual game. Yes, kids go to have grades. They're about 9-10 months of the year, but catching kids up just to go back to the reading scores, catching kids up, it is not a one-year game. It is a multi-year game to make sure you are catching up, accelerating young people to where they need to be and putting them on that path. And so if you are in this constant annual cycle of setting an annual goal, potentially pivoting, you never give anything enough time to really take root or shape before you move on to the next one. So I think where you all can come in is to set an umbrella for the arc of time it takes to see improvement and the commitment to knowing it's going to take more than a year, the staying power, the support and the cover to superintendents and school leaders to try to do that for more than a year. So I think at the state, I think that is the highest leverage activity, frankly, because you give your leaders cover. At the system level and at the district level, I do think it's the same thing. I would try to set multi-year plans. And that doesn't mean that there can't be milestones or metrics that you look at annually. But if you can step back and set a 3 to a 5 year vision for where you want young people to be, that gives you more time to to allow kids to accelerate to the place we know they can be. I mean, it's very similar to what the principal said, like, you know, looking at every year is almost judging at the halftime or, you know, the end of the period versus like the longer arc of what we want for young people and their trajectory in school.
Any of my colleagues have any additional questions, comments? Hearing none, I would once again thank you for your time and efforts and a wonderful report. And again, we'll make sure that that's disseminated across the board. Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Core, it looked like Member Katniss might have had a question, but
Oh.
I'm not sure.
So sorry.
I just want to say I'm a big fan of TNTP. So I was a Fishman prize finalist twice. So very, very big on TNTP.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Katniss, and thank you, Executive Director Ross, for the noticing. All right, I'm going to move us on to 5F. This is the presentation, discussion, and possible action to close rulemaking procedures regarding the instruction on the Holocaust and other genocides. Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. As part of the rulemaking cycle, this is the third time this has come before the board. You voted to open. Policy Director Yana has provided you an update, and this is a vote to close. Policy Director Yana has held a public hearing. No significant feedback was given at that time. In fact, I don't think any feedback was given at that time. So he's available if you have any questions.
Fantastic. Are there, in fact, any questions for Rico? No? Hearing none, then do I have a motion that the board adopt the submitted drafts and close rulemaking procedures for AAC R7-2-301A 4B, R7-2-302A 1B, instruction on the Holocaust and other genocides. Do I have such a motion? Superintendent Horn, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
I think that was Member Kervikas just by a hair. You won the last one, Dr. Clay, but so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Thank you. So I'll move us on to 5G. This is update. This is for information only, and it's an update on rulemaking procedures for educator discipline. Executive Director Ross.
President Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. I actually will have Policy Director Yanez speak on this as an update to some work that is occurring between board staff and the Attorney General's office.
Thank you. President Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. We have a small update on the educator discipline rulemaking package that we have been working towards. After working with the Attorney General's office, they had recommended some small changes to ensure that we're aligning to statute and conforming to rulemaking on just making sure that we are remaining specific to the types of cases on the procedures that we're looking to change in order to make sure that we can reissue certification cards for or teacher certifications for very limited areas. The rule that we are looking at in 1307 was drafted in 2019 and implemented then. It was conforming to fingerprint clearance card statute. And that was the way that they were trying to adhere to that process for certification and for reissuance of those teacher certifications. Although in this space that we're in right now, it's not going to align in every circumstance. So we're working with them to just make sure that we are really honing in on the details to remain specific and adhering to statute while also allowing for board members to have more flexibility in their disciplinary actions.
Thank you. And again, this is for information only, so this will come back to us.
Yes, we're still working on honing in some of the wordsmithing in that provision specifically.
Okay.
And that will come back in December.
In December. Thank you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay. Well, thank you very much. And we'll look forward to that at our next meeting in December. And with that, I will move us on to 5H. This is presentation, discussion, and possible action to close rulemaking procedures for special education age of transition services. Once again, Executive Director Ross.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Again, this is a rule that you've seen multiple times at this point. You voted to open, have received an update, and then this will be a vote to close. Public hearing was held to discuss this change, and the feedback was all positive. In fact, overwhelmingly the feedback received for this rule change has been very positive. And it's just as a reminder, it's changing rulemaking so that the age of transition services for students with disabilities, instead of coming after age 16, which sometimes pushed it into, say, junior or senior year, it comes no later than the end of 9th grade. And imagine there might maybe be a comment from a board member on this.
Well, let's see if in fact there is. Would any of my colleagues, Member Kravickas, please?
I just want to give a wholehearted thank you to staff for their diligence through this project. Even when there's a lot of support, there's a lot of paperwork and wordsmithing that has to happen. And hopefully you've all seen the calls to the public over the months, all of the favorable comment. So on behalf of all the advocates and attorneys and parents, really thank you very much to the board.
Fantastic. Other thoughts or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none, do I have a motion that the board adopt the submitted drafts and close rulemaking procedures for AAC R7-2-401 G4 Special Education Age of Transition Services? Do I have such a motion? Member Kravickas, do I have a second?
Second. That was me.
All right. You know what? I need to see your name in the minutes there, Dr. Hagerman. I'm going to give you the second on that. Any thoughts or comments or discussion needed? Okay. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. That brings us on to item 6. Which is a call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment on items on today's consent portion of enforcement actions. As always, you'll have 2 minutes to share your thoughts with us. Executive Director Ross, are there some folks who would like to chat with us?
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, no one is registered for this call to the public at this time.
Okay, then I will move us on to item 7. This is, in fact, the consent agenda for certification enforcement actions. As always, if there is an item any of my colleagues would like to have removed, we can do that. If there is not a desire to remove any item from the consent agenda items, I would entertain a motion to approve items 7A1 through 7A10, 7B1, and 7C2 and 7C1. All right. Yeah, there's a little typo there. I got caught up in the C's there. Let me try that again. Do I have a motion to approve items 7A1 through 7A10, 7B1, and 7C1 and 7C2? Do I have such a motion? Thank you, Member Kravickas, for putting me out of my misery. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Good, because I was going to read those again if you did it. Okay, I have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes unanimously. Move us on to item 8. This is once again a call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment on items on the general session portion of the enforcement action. Once again, folks will be asked to limit their comments to 2 minutes. Director Ross, have we received any requests to chat with us?
Dr. Kors, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, we have received requests for this call to the public. Up first will be Marcy Barenberg, followed by Eric Cardenas, and then Raul Cardenas.
Yeah, please.
Members of the board, my name is Marcy Barenberg. I'm student B's mother, and my son is no longer at PDSD, and he will never be affected by Ms. Gemmer again. However, I have prioritized attending both professional practice hearings and all 3 of these board meetings where she is discussed because I believe in protecting these children. Carrie said she retired early due to this situation, but I do not want to see her have the ability to return and injure more children. I plead with you again for the 3rd time to not allow her around any more deaf students. At both professional practice hearings, I listened to Carrie under oath tell blatant lies. The committee called her out on one of them this last meeting and when she contradicted herself, and then they allowed her to backtrack. She also regularly says that she was only had complaints on her as a strict teacher, not unprofessional behavior. But many comments that were both written and live at the former meetings showed that that's not true. One parent wrote about how Carrie forced her student to soil himself in the classroom and refused to let him go to the restroom when he could no longer hold it anymore. I think he was 3rd or 4th grade. Another parent complained to administration when she found out Ms. Gemmer isolated her student from classmates during lunch, forced her child to write a letter saying the student lied about an honest complaint she had made about Ms. Gemmer. When the student's mom intercepted the letter and after confronting the teacher and complained to the principal, Ms. Gemmer's hostility towards the student increased until finally, after months, the mom removed her daughter from the school, similarly to how we all removed our students from the school. This is not strict behavior. This is a pattern of humiliation and control. Being in front of the professional practice committee, I felt like we moms were villainized. They asked each of us why our sons did not come to speak. We were originally told that our boys could be in a separate room, talk to the committee members and tell their stories, answer the members' questions, and the boys would not have to see Ms. Gemmer. However, the state's lawyer informed us that not only would they see Ms. Gemmer, even if they attended virtually, but that she could ask them questions. As moms, we were uncomfortable with that. All 3 boys previously had court-appointed injunctions against harassment awarded so that Ms. Gemmer would legally be required to leave them alone. These boys are 12 and 13 years old. Continuing to talk about this keeps reopening the trauma that they have dealt with from her, much less having to face her. Absolutely not. As educators, I would expect that the professional practice committee would understand that it was an unrealistic expectation for these kids to feel safe and comfortable having to interact directly with her. Again, I ask you guys, in 2024, when we have 0 tolerance policies for bullying, why would we allow this teacher to continue to abuse and humiliate students? Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kors, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have Eric Cardenas, followed by Raul Cardenas, and then Amy Young.
Aye.
Hello. My name is Eric Cardenas, and this is now my 2nd time coming in front of you, asking you to please not allow Harry Gamar around deaf students. Harry Gamar is the reason I did not feel safe at school, and the principal put a safety plan in place where she was not supposed to be near me. Harry broke it many times and nothing happened. She regularly tried to make me uncomfortable because my mom talked about what she did to my friend at school. PDSD used to be my favorite place, and I felt at home there. There were a lot of people like me, and everyone signed. After November 4th, that rapidly changed. Carrie has a long history of doing this to deaf kids, and I know many others that she has harmed. She's a bully and does not treat deaf people good. It is not okay to threaten to call the police or call a kid a zoo animal because of what they sound like, especially when he couldn't control it. She has called other people animal names too. In a deaf news story on Daily Moth about November 4th, a man said that when he was a kid, he called him a pig. We did protests, and a lot of people talked about how bad she treated them too. I know some people don't care, but I want you to care about deaf kids and don't let her be a bad person to us anymore.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have Raul Cardenas, followed by Amy Young, and then Laura Morales.
Members of the board, my name is Raul Cardenas, father to student B. Thank you for letting me speak again. My son used to love his school. He felt safe there and enjoyed being around other deaf people. Removing him from the school due to their unwillingness to follow safety plans and court-ordered injunctions against harassment with Ms. Gemmer was not something we took lightly. During the last professional practice committee meeting, I watched from home and it seemed more biased than the original hearing. As if the committee was offended, it got sent back to them. I watched Carrie say that it only got sent back because we parents were causing a scene. Yes, we have continued to speak out because we are concerned. We continue to take time from our lives and relive this over and over again for almost 2 years because of her actions. She chose to come into the classroom and humiliate and belittle a student for vocalization he could not control. She chose to continue to harass multiple students. She takes no accountability for her actions and goes as far as to say she does not have any remorse for how she handled it. The committee seemed to focus on the fact that the school mishandled the situation. They are right. We all agree with that. In fact, due to the school's actions, we successfully navigated an OCR complaint that found the school at fault for allowing a hostile learning environment to develop and continue, and they have addressed the school. The school did not even give Carrie her slap on the wrist until they knew that OCR accepted to investigate the complaint. Despite what the committee believes, we didn't only elevate the complaints about Ms. Gemmer. And what was before them was to address the complaints about Ms. Gemmer's unprofessional behavior, not how the school handled it. It is your turn to act on Ms. Gemmer's unprofessional behavior and the 2 complaints filed to the State Board of Education that arose from November 4th and Ms. Gemmer's increasingly hostility towards the students. Set the example and ensure that educators know that it is not okay to belittle, berate, and harass students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have Amy Young, followed by Laura Morales, and then Brenda Horowitz.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. I just want to take a moment to address what transpired at the Arizona Professional Practice Committee meeting concerning Carrie. As parents, we felt unheard during this process. The focus seemed more to be on why our 12 and 13-year-old boys did not feel comfortable confronting their abuser rather than the issue at hand. I was nervous myself to participate, so I can only imagine the fear and anxiety our children felt. I am relieved I chose not to bring my son because after the meeting, we were yelled at by Ms. Gemar's friends who told us we should be ashamed of ourselves and accused us of being bad parents. If my son had been present for that, it would have only traumatized him further. Additionally, the committee seemed to dwell on the entire situation could have been prevented if the school had taken better action. The OCR had already determined that the school's fault, what their fault was. However, that meeting was specifically about Ms. Gemar, not the school. Ms. Gemar's behavior would have persisted regardless as she verbally abused our boys, because this is not an isolated event. Others have reported her in the past, and yet no action has been taken. This pattern of inaction is exactly why the deaf community has been so afraid of her. Another frustration from the committee was while we were being questioned, Ms. Gemar's group of friends were loudly whispering, gesturing, which was quite distracting to us parents. The committee said nothing to them. However, we were listening to Carrie make false statements about another mom. Oh, sorry. We were listening to Carrie make false statements, and another mom and I gave each other a look. And we were told immediately that we were not allowed to interact or make faces. This will be my final time speaking on this matter, as I have lost hope that Ms. Gemar will face any consequences for her action against these children. This has been an ongoing struggle for the past 2 years, and every time I speak about it, it reopens a painful wound for both me and my son. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Up next, we have Laura Morales, followed by Brenda Horowitz.
Hello, good morning. My name is Laura Morales. I am here today to speak with you guys and to speak to the board, the State Board of Education. I am really distraught by this whole situation. Quite frankly, I'm actually still surprised that we're still having to speak about the situation, but I was an intern back in fall of 2021. I did an internship there as a new teacher. And when I witnessed Carrie Hamar's behavior around the students and around the employees, I got to see her every day, Monday through Friday, in the cafeteria. And I was quite really appalled by her behavior, because it was something that I had never witnessed before, even as a new teacher. But, even to my prior, placements, I had never witnessed such toxic behavior. Her behavior towards kids is not okay. And, there were many times that this behavior happened during, the 6 months that I was there. And no one ever raised an eyebrow. No one ever said anything. And I think it speaks because of the fact that she was a bully there. And no one ever questioned her behavior. No one ever said anything about it. It was more like it was a norm for her to yell, belittle, insult kids there. I'm also a parent of a deaf child. And that was a red flag for me. Part of the reason why we homeschool now, because I will not tolerate any teacher to bully or harass or abuse my own child. And so Carrie Hamar's behavior towards kids is definitely not okay. And I really do hope that today you guys take, you guys take action to this case, because it's been a long time since these parents and myself have come on here. And I hope that today really changes something, because this is not okay. Somebody's got to care about our deaf kids. And it seems like the more and more, this keeps going on, it just seems like nobody cares. And quite frankly, I'm an educator, but I'm an educator for all kids. And I believe that we need to have strong, positive teachers in the workforce. And Carrie Hamar is definitely not one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Melissa, do we have Brenda Horowitz with us? No? Okay. Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, that concludes this call to the public.
Thank you. Yep, please, Superintendent Horn.
Mr. Executive Director, it appears that the people who spoke aren't not happy with what the committee did. Could someone tell us what the committee did and what the reasoning was?
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, my recommendation would be to do if you want to pull that item, do the consent, and then we can address that item specifically.
With concurrence of my colleagues, I'll do just that. We can take this as a single motion with the removal of 9B4. Okay, so I am seeking a motion at this point to approve items 9A1 and 9A2 and 9B1 through 9B10 with the exclusion of 9B4. Okay. Do I have such a motion? Member Meyerson, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Dr. Hagerman. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, now if you'd just go ahead and restate your question, Superintendent Horn, as it relates to 9B4.
Yes, it appears as though some, the parents who spoke were not happy with the actions of the committee. So I'd like somebody to tell us what the committee did and their reasoning.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. With us today is our Director of Enforcement Actions, Garnett Burns, and then Joe Cata. Did I say that right? Cata, my apologies. Joe Cata from the Attorney General's office, both of whom can speak to the case.
Good morning, President
Good morning.
Core, Superintendent Horn. I was at both PPAC meetings. The position of the PPAC was that the school should have handled it differently. It was more of a school issue than a teacher issue. That is where the focus sat. The second time it went back to PPAC, it was to hear witness and victim testimony. As the parents mentioned, the children were not comfortable being in the presence of Ms. Gamar. We did offer the executive session room. We tried to find an alternative way to set that up. However, the parents were not comfortable with that, understandably so. And so that became kind of the focus of the second PPAC. There was no real additional testimony other than the parents who were not present for the incident that happened. And so they just voted the way they voted.
You state.
It was for no disciplinary action to be taken. And it was a unanimous, I believe, or maybe one dissenting vote. I apologize.
There was one dissenting vote.
One dissenting vote.
Anything there?
And my name's Joseph Cada. I'm an Assistant Attorney General, the Education Unit. I was not the attorney that had handled the case at either hearings. However, I did review the transcripts, some of the evidence that was put forth before the committee, as well as the complaint. So I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability as to the action that was taken. But everything that Ms. Burns had said is accurate as to how the proceedings went. The parents of each of the three students involved had testified at the second hearing after the matter had been remanded from this board at its May meeting this year. And the parents had testified generally as to their children's general demeanor following the incident in question, any adverse effects on them. One parent had mentioned that there was initially no issues that the child had complained about. He went to school like normal, and then it was only after the incident had been posted on social media and some back and forth that the child had, become uncomfortable. That was in the testimony. There is one child who was alleged to have had Tourette's. The parent of the child had testified that there has been no official diagnosis of that. That was something that was brought up by Ms. Gamar on cross-exam. The parents had testified that the children did not wish to testify because they did not want to be around Ms. Gamar. And I'll defer to Ms. Burns on how an accommodation was offered to allow them to testify. The committee members, had questions for some of the witnesses that, focused on, to what extent had administration responded to this. The hearing officer had, cut short questioning regarding, what had transpired between parents and the principal on the grounds that it was getting away from the issue at hand, which was mainly Ms. Gamar's interaction with the students. So just keeping the hearing on track as to the respondent herself's actions as opposed to anything that transpired after the incident. But nonetheless, as Ms. Burns stated, the committee members did tend to view the situation as something that got out of got out of hand, that it could have been properly addressed through the administration, as opposed to social media postings that some of the children had not been a part of themselves. It was more part of the parents. But that's what I can generally speak to. And then if any members of the board, Superintendent Horn, Dr. Core, if you have any questions, I'm happy to entertain them or defer to Ms. Burns as appropriate.
Just a quick question. Is it relatively common to have the students themselves speak at these?
I'll defer to Ms. Burns
Yeah.
on that.
Sure.
It's rare. We try to present cases without the students involved, and we do the best we can. I think in my time here in 10 years, we've maybe had 3 cases that students have spoken at. Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I thought. Any other thoughts? Yeah, please.
Maybe for Ms. Burns also. I'm sorry. I'm curious to the point of this should have been handled by the school versus kind of escalating to this. When we think about other cases that we've seen, whether it's, an incident from a teacher, like, force to another student, that sort of rises to the level of coming before the PPAC, et cetera. So I'm just curious, like the delineation between this should have been a school issue, which it sounds like there's sort of documented evidence of inappropriate language to students, et cetera, just sort of the difference between a school issue versus being addressed here. Oh, whomever.
You can answer that.
Yeah.
So one thing that had been at issue in this case was that the proper chain of command had not been followed with respect to the incident. So as the board might recall from reviewing the case materials when this case was before the board before, the incident regarded Ms. Gamar's statements to students on a certain day when the students could be heard in her classroom, and she came over from her classroom and said statements to the students to the effect of, trying to get them to be quiet, and, had mentioned that it sounds like a zoo, something like that. I'm paraphrasing admittedly. But the teacher in the classroom where the students were had messaged one of the parents of the students directly before she had gone to the principal or administration about it. And so that was something that the committee members had took note of, is that the teacher whose students were impacted by Ms. Gamar coming in had not followed proper procedures, which had she gone to the principal and perhaps the principal could have set up a meeting or some other mitigating, arrangement that perhaps parents would not have taken to social media, and the situation could have been controlled internally. Of course, that doesn't guarantee that there would have been a different outcome, but it seems like that in this particular case, the teacher, in the classroom here had sort of taken it upon herself to try to mitigate it in the first instance rather than elevating it to a proper channel. And then Ms. Burns has
Got it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Superintendent Horn.
I'm troubled. Did the committee not believe what the parents told them?
From my reading of the transcripts, the committee member.
There you go.
It didn't appear from the transcripts that there was any disbelief from the committee members, aside from the fact that with respect to one student, this is the student I had referred to earlier, the parent had testified that the student, following the incident, initially had no issues and was doing pretty well. And then one of the committee members had then clarified, because the same parent had also testified that the student became anxious and had issues. The committee member had asked a question clarifying when he went from being, doing okay to not okay. And the parent's response to that was after the social media stuff. So it appeared that the committee members had asked questions just clarifying what had happened. But, upon my reading of the record, I didn't find questions that were directed at, the parents' credibility or otherwise, trying to discredit them, but more so just clarifying the timing of events.
Could I ask, I'm sorry, what's her name? I forgot your name, I'm sorry.
Miss Burns.
Ms. Burns, okay, thank you. So you were there, right?
Yes.
So when we hear people say a teacher was abusive to kids, it sounds like a bad thing. And to say it's something the school could have handled is really not satisfactory. So I'm wondering, what's your reaction to what's happened? And
Superintendent Horn, Dr. Core, members of the board, I don't, Garnett, executive or director of enforcement actions, Burns, that's not a question I'd be comfortable with her asking or answering.
Was it your observation that they ruled the way they did because they didn't believe the parents, or because they thought the actions described by the parents was okay?
Superintendent Horn, Dr. Core, members of the board, Garnett is not really able to speak to the intent of the PPAC. I would not want us to represent or misrepresent their intent. What we have are the transcripts and their voting record. And so I think that's where we would let the PPAC speak versus a second party speaking to their intent.
I
please.
do have, so from the transcripts, one committee member from, I believe it was the first hearing, had made a comment to the effect of that, they wouldn't see a problem with a more experienced teacher. In this case, it was Ms. Gamar going over to another teacher's classroom to, help with an issue in there. That committee member, did not find the specific act of just simply leaving one's classroom to go to another classroom to be inappropriate. Just that specific fact that they didn't, in that dialogue, render an opinion as to the other actions. But just from that reading of the transcript, there was some notion of one of the committee members that the conduct, that specific act, was not inappropriate.
Well, I would agree with that. It's no problem with a teacher going into their class that are being noisy, but that's not what I heard from the parents. What I heard from the parents is the teacher's abusive to kids. Did anybody question the truth of that on the transcript that you read?
So the Ms. Gamar had admitted to the language that she had used, that when she heard commotion in the next room over, and this is what I'm getting from the transcripts, that she had gone from her classroom to the classroom next door and had entered the room and said something to the effect of, it sounds like a zoo in here. Should I call someone? 911, the principal. And she had admitted to that in testimony. She had said that it was stated in her words, a joking manner, that she did not intend to literally call 911, that she was just, that was her choice of words to address the situation at hand.
I don't find that a problem either. What I find a problem is what the parents testified to that she said. So I'm not sure. I don't know what we can do. We already sent it back once. I'd like to hear what other board members think about this.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Clay to see what her thoughts or questions are.
I agree with Superintendent Horn. I am very, very disturbed. I'm a parent, and just hearing what a teacher may or may not have done to a student, and then hearing the student's testimony, it gives too much question. There's too much question now. It's not cut and dry anymore. So my questions, I have two. Okay. The first one is the testimonies, and I think Superintendent Horn might have asked this, but I need to ask it again. Were the testimonies given today, were they the same as what was given to the committee? Were they the same? And was that discussed? That's my first question. Were they the same? The same thing we've heard today, was it heard before?
Dr. Clay, if you could clarify the same thing, are you asking if the same testimonies from the second hearing were to go to a third hearing, would they be the same or?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the confusion. What was the testimonies given today by the teacher, parents, and student? Were they the same testimonies that were given to the board?
Oh, for
To
at
the
the,
people who made these decisions? Were they the same?
I don't know the actual names of the parents involved, but given that the transcripts I reviewed had been redacted for the names. But I can say that to some extent, there's consistency. However, there are a lot of messages, a lot of things brought up today that weren't in the transcript. So there was additional facts presented today that were not in the transcript that was before the committee.
Okay. Thank you. And just questions. Regardless of what the parents had done on Facebook, et cetera, did she treat those students in a way that appears or is perceived to be demeaning, disrespectful, and bullying? Okay. Was that perceived? Do you know?
I think that a question like that is certainly open to, interpretation,
Understood.
and certainly given the context of, the type of students, involved, them being hard of hearing. There could be a perception that the words that she had chosen were, degrading against that certain type of, class of people, hard of hearing. But on the other hand, there could be a perception that it's, as she had said in her words, just a metaphor, just in joking. She had testified that, she herself, and again, I'm paraphrasing here, but would not have had a problem with someone telling her own child. It was a hypothetical, but, using similar language. And I guess she had described the sounds that she had heard from the room to be, quote, growling. I don't know exactly what that entails. That was her description of it. So, but, ultimately, I think it's open to interpretation. And, I think the committee members, had their own interpretation, which resulted in the outcome here.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So my only in closing, my concern are the issues at hand, basically, are the teacher's action towards a student who's trying to learn. That's my concern, and that to me is the issue at hand right now. Thank you.
I'll say I think we all struggle with this, and I'll try to articulate my struggle. One, I'm, obviously incredibly moved by folks who have taken time twice now to come address us, gone to PPAC. And of course, Eric has done a great job twice now of sharing his experience. And then you flip that coin and we have PPAC. We have a system in place that adjudicates these things. It's really difficult for myself and my colleagues here to kind of come in at the 11th hour, if you will, and trying to judge things. So I'm just troubled and conflicted. But I think that's the task before us to balance the compelling and emotional folks' testimony who have come in some cases twice to chat with us, with the work of the PPAC, the structure we have in place to take this burden off us, and have them, hear the full case and ask the questions. It's not easy. Member Myers.
Wondering in terms of possible like next steps and kind of courses of action, Director Ross, it seems to me that the second hearing was actually arguably like not almost ineffective is certainly the wrong word, but obviously it didn't do what it was intended in terms of being able to get more information or collect more evidence. Is that an accurate statement of the second PPAC hearing in terms of that the students understandably were of course not participating, but I'm wondering if there's what the sort of other option is, because I agree with Dr. Kaur of for us to sort of, without going through all of the evidence here in this moment, is there an alternative to ensuring that these families and these children have an opportunity to make sure that their voices are heard in a way that it sounds like they did not feel that was the case in the second PPAC hearing?
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, Member Meyerson, that was actually the reason it was sent back to PPAC last time, was to make sure that there was space for witness testimony. And so it sounds from Garnett and from Joe that the testimony, there was space for testimony from the parents. So I want to make sure that is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There was 3 students involved, and a parent of each of the 3 students had testified. Their testimony was complete. They were free to testify as to their child, just in general, how their child was a great child, inquisitive, all of the positive qualities, background information, how the child was impacted by the incident in question, what actions the parents took, including the actions that they took with the principal, and actions that they had took just to gain support from their own community by way of a petition on social media.
Can I just ask, was it true, or do we have evidence that the parents were bullied during the hearing or immediately post the hearing based on what one of the parents had shared?
From the transcripts, I can't say that there is any evidence of bullying, simply just based on the transcripts. I can't speak to anything beyond what I have in the transcripts.
Member Kravickas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and a big thank you to the parents and students once again who've come out. It's a lot of time and effort to do that. I guess I understand the question of whether or not the school took sufficient steps, but I guess I never understood that to be what we're asking. I thought what we are asking, or PPAC, and all the way down, is whether or not unprofessional conduct occurred. Whether or not we think the school addressed it sufficiently is almost, in my mind, a separate question. Can you help me kind of delineate those two?
Yes, certainly. And that is a question that the hearing officer had attempted to parse out as well when testimony got too far afield into what had transpired external of Ms. Gamar's actions, and orienting it back towards those actions. There were findings made by PPAC that the action did constitute unprofessional conduct. There is no dispute as to that. They simply just recommended no disciplinary action be taken.
So I think that's the core of the issue for us as the board, is there was unprofessional conduct. Typically what PPAC brings to us is anything from a letter, from no letter censure on up. And that's the question before us, is that unprofessional conduct did occur. Whether or not we thought the school handled it sufficiently, I'm sure we could all debate, but I don't think that's the question at hand.
Superintendent Horn.
When there's a dispute, I really like to get both sides. I don't feel like we're getting the side of the PPAC. And I've been told I can't inquire beyond the transcript of the staff, but would it be acceptable to get someone from PPAC or more than one person from PPAC and give us their side? Because what we heard is not satisfied by saying it's the school's fault or some of these other things. They must have had a reason for what they did.
Dr. Kaur, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, it is not customary practice to have members of the PPAC come to a board meeting to testify as to what the entirety of the PPAC was thinking. Again, the transcripts and their voting is the evidence that's provided to the board.
I think it's making us unsatisfied.
Thank you. Yeah.
I did note in the transcripts that the questions that some of the committee members had asked. So I'll submit that, a review of the transcripts is very, can be very enlightening on this point to see as to what the direction the committee members had taken and what influenced that.
Well, if she spoke to the kids the way the parents have testified, and the teacher or teacher in training testified, we're not getting a reason why that's not worthy of discipline. So maybe you can get it out of the transcripts. I haven't heard a reason.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Two things. Dr. Hagerman has had his hand up for quite a while, so we'll get to him in just a moment. And then the PPACs, like all board meetings, are live streamed. So if it is the will of the board to table this decision, staff can clip the hearing for you all and send you that recording. You will literally be watching the PPAC, if that would help answer some questions.
Dr. Hagerman, appreciate your patience. Please go ahead.
I think Executive Director Ross kind of added an element. I'm feeling we should table. My initial thinking was an executive session for legal guidance, but I'd like to make a proposal that we table, maybe start or have legal guidance in an executive session before we come back and make a decision on what to do in the situation.
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, Dr. Hagerman. So the just table setting for the board, typically if the board were to overturn a PPAC finding, it would have to provide its rationale responding to each of the findings of fact, each of the conclusions of law in the actual board order. In this case, because no discipline was called for, there are actually no conclusions of law. So the board would still have to sort of state its rationale for any of its decisions. And to kind of go back to what Member Krivickas said, the board would have the authority to do everything from uphold the PPAC's decision to letter of censure, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year revocation. All of that is within the board's purview. So I just want to table set that. Those are the possibilities before the board. But you also have the ability to table this. We can send you. You've already had all of the documents and the transcripts. We can send you the actual video from PPAC. And if that would help you all to make the decision, and then we could bring the item back in December.
I move we table the decision.
I think that was Dr. Hagerman's motion, so I'm going to count yours as a second. I'll kind of break protocol here, and so we have a motion, we have a second, we have a motion on the table, and I'm fully supportive of that. I'm in my 8th year on this board, and this is probably the toughest one. But when there is a finding of unprofessional conduct, where I lack the understanding, I think your satisfaction is why that wouldn't warrant something. And that's what I'm. And I love the idea of sending the clip. If I could watch the clip, then I might have an understanding that I agree or disagree. So I will be voting in support of this motion. Any other thoughts from my colleagues? Okay, again, I'm going to ask you to table. I think you used the term table set. We have a motion to table this item, and then we're going to bring it. We're going to get the video clip. We're going to bring it back in December, and then our options will be exactly what Executive Director Ross.
Yes, Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board. Just to reiterate, the board has full authority to a range of decision making. It can uphold the PPAC's findings, which were for no discipline. It can have call for a letter of censure, a suspension. It can call for a suspension with required coursework. So all the things that you've sort of seen come before you in a PPAC decision, the board has that same authority. And we will send you all the clips of the hearings, but in staffing, and we'll prepare you by also reiterating the ideas available for the board, or the mechanisms available.
Beautifully done. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so we have the motion on the table is to table 9B4, review the clip and bring it back to our December meeting. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion carries unanimously. That brings us to item 10, and just a reminder that as is our kind of protocol, we do not have a November meeting, but we have an early December meeting to kind of juggle the holidays, if you will. So our next meeting will be Monday, December 9th. Anything else, Director Ross?
Dr. Core, Superintendent Horn, members of the board, I've already sent out the scheduling email for the December meeting, just because it does get tricky around the holidays. So the sooner I can hear back from all of you, the better. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Then hearing nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting at 12:21. Thanks for all your time and attention, folks.
Thank you.